What's up, everyone? It is Sunday night, and we are at Bat City Comics Professionals coming to you live to talk about all of this week's new indie releases, as well as all of last week's new indie releases, because we did not have a live show. So we're here to wind down your weekend. As always, I'm your host, Shannon, aka Small Press Shann, and with me I have the wonderful Wednesday Phil. What's up, Phil?
Hello.
How have you been the last 2 weeks while we haven't seen you?
Exhausted. I was bummed there wasn't a show last week, but I wasn't going to be on it anyway. So I was like, all right, well, you know, at least everyone's going to have to take the night off. But no, it's always fun when we get to do this, and it's on, all the holidays are this weekend. Cinco de Mayo, May the 4th, Free Comic Book Day. It was a crazy weekend.
It was a crazy weekend. It has been a crazy 2 weeks at Bat City. Last week, the reason we didn't have a show is because we didn't get our diamond shipment, so we missed half of our indie titles. But we were part of Remake Learning Days last week, which was a celebration of just different ways to learn as a family. And we were participating with with all the organizations. It was an international festival, and we were one of the many people who had events in the 4-county area here on the Sun Coast. We had over 200 events, and we did 2 of them, so it was super cool that we got the opportunity to have an educator seminar as well as a kids activity day, which was super, super cool. We had the opportunity to just have all these fun learning games and playing with the kids from the area. We had almost 300 kids come out from around the community, so it was a lot of fun. And then we had Free Comic Book Day yesterday, which was also really great. So we've been slammed, like you said. So we brought 2 bottles of wine tonight. No, Phil's always asking if we can have a white wine. So we've got a white wine for Phil this week. That's called California Coastal Vibes. It's a Pinot Grigio from California, obviously. And then we have Alamos, which is an Argentinian Malbec from the Andes Mountains. So Phil's going to try one. I'm going to try the other. We did hear that this might have been open a little bit, so it might be a little flat for the white wine. But
I think I'm a white wine person.
I think you are. That makes sense for the things that you like to drink in general.
I think so.
Yeah. So, bring Phil white wines to drink on the show.
I also think I like wine cold.
Yeah.
Versus room temperature.
And that makes sense that you would like white wines more because they are made to be served cold, and most reds are not. Okay. You can serve a red chilled, but it's not really normally the situation because you want all those spices to pop out and stuff. This red is actually cold today, though. The one that you brought, it actually was surprisingly cold when I took a drink of it. So
that could have just been maybe the temperature of the Wawa.
Yeah, it's Wawa. Probably just had it in there.
Because they are. Every time I go into Wawa, it's so chilly in there.
Yeah, so you can put that way for you, and I'll put this one this way for me.
Is it offensive to ask for ice cubes for your wine? If you were at a party.
I mean, I don't think it's offensive to do that if that's how you prefer it.
Especially with whites.
I mean, yeah.
Well, if I did it with a red wine.
People might wonder why, but I don't think it should matter. Drink it how you like it, Okay. But yeah, it's been crazy. Free Comic Book Day was awesome. Again, hundreds and hundreds of people came out yesterday. So excited to have that. We had such a great lineup of people out. We had Troy Douglas, the caricature artist, has been here with us the last 2 weeks, and he's a caricature artist at Busch Gardens, and so he's been out the last 2 weeks doing caricatures at the 2 different events, and it was super awesome. I love seeing all the people who were dressed up in costume getting caricatures, because we had Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman all got caricatures, so it's just kind of a fun way to see it. And then we had Gary Barker with us, who is the artist of Garfield for our entire lives. He's been working with Jim Davis and drawing Garfield since the 80s. And he was doing Garfield sketches for people. Oh my God. They were some of the coolest things I've ever seen. You could kind of give him like 3 words and he would make a Garfield style drawing for you with those 3 words. What did you get? Because yours was super cool.
So I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. So I asked for Garfield and Odie as Jane Silent Bob. And he brought me the piece, and I was like, "This is probably the most beautiful commission that I've ever had done." Also, because I was telling him too, it's Garfield's been in my life for so long. I remember back in the '90s, they had those like oddly shaped Garfield books that were like long and rectangular and just looked so terrible on a bookshelf. But I remember getting those all the time. So I was telling him, I was like, "Dude, you've probably been the comic book artist I've seen the longest that I've been alive." And for him to do that, I was just like, I can't believe. And his prices, I was just like, dude, you are way too kind for what you're doing here, because this artwork, like everyone that brought their sketch in, I was like, this is so cool. Yeah. Like, it's just,
Oh, they were great. And I saw yours before you did, and I was like, oh my God, you're going to like pee in your pants. Like, you're going to be so happy.
I went home and stared at it for a good half hour.
You're like, this is all I needed in life. Yeah. Life accomplished.
I put that one King Diamond song on from Clerks and just stared at it. I was like, this is beautiful. I will never let this go.
You should not.
This will be the item I'm buried with.
Move over, Bonnie. There's a new cat.
Well, it'll be her and
the drawing.
Yeah, okay. All of us together.
Oh, cute.
And she'll be dressed as Jay, and I'll be dressed as Silent Bob.
Cute. You think that's? I don't know. I think your cat might be more Silent Bob than you are.
No, she is way too talkative.
Really? I should never.
The moment I come home, it's just like meow, meow. Just will follow me everywhere and meow at me. So it's nice. We have great conversations.
Yeah, I bet. It was a lot of fun. Thank you to everybody who came out for the last 2 weekends, and thank you again to our incredible volunteer teams for both weekends. We could not have made either weekend work without the incredible support from the people in the community and the Bat Fam who've been out here helping us. I mean, literally, one of our community volunteers, one of our Bat Fam members, had to build us steps like 5 minutes before we started Free Comic Book Day yesterday. And so new steps like right as it's happening. So, I mean, extraordinary. We have a lot of comics though. So I am going to go through tons and tons of comics, and we are going to go through them in a very quick way to tell you all of the indie books that you missed in the last 2 weeks. And if you didn't miss them, you read them, and you want to share your thoughts on them, please drop in the comments, because we love hearing what other people are thinking about these books. So we are going to jump in now, and we're going to start out with Red Winter Fallout, issue 4 from Scout Comics. And if you have not picked this up yet, and you're a fan of things like The Bourne Identity or any Tom Clancy novel. Honestly, like if you're a Tom Clancy fan at all, this is definitely something you should be checking out. This is the story of somebody who has gotten mixed up in all of this spy world in Russia, and we find out that on the American side, the person who's helping this Russian operative essentially is a former American spy who's kind of defected from both the government and America in general. And now America has sent in another person who's supposed to be kind of going in to figure out what's going on there and why the situation, like get them out, like get those operatives out or collect them in some capacity. And it just seems like every time it kind of falls apart, like the person they sent is not good. It's like their first field position, and the person who's there is a long-term, like really good spy. So, you know, all of the things that could go wrong have gone wrong, and all of the cool spy things that you expect continue to happen. So if you like spy books, this is definitely one that I think you should pick up, because it's got a lot of the similar twists and turns that you're going to love, but it gives you just enough new things to the story that you're constantly invested in what's coming next. Also from Scout, Category 0 Conflict, Issue 5. This is going to be one of those Scout books that goes a little bit longer than 5 issues. This has no feeling of like an ending in sight yet. But this is the story. This is one of the superpowered books for an indie superpower universe. This is all about people who are called 1%ers, I believe, and the 1% that get superpowers is what they're talking about. And there's, of course, the research lab that's been doing research on them forever, and the guy that's in charge of all that research, his daughter is one of the people who may, in fact, be kind of like a Jean Grey, where she might be the most powerful one ever. And they are blocking her powers from her. Like, as far as she thinks she doesn't really have any powers, or that her powers are kind of just a dud. And she just, in this issue, is starting to learn that she might have been lied to her whole life. Meanwhile, we've got, like, our resistance people who are all learning their own powers and kind of escaped the system and are trying to build up, like, what they're going to do to save everybody from this organization that's kind of trying to push them all down. So if you like that time period of X-Men, like when they were really going with the you need to register the mutants and all of the stories like that, you're going to really enjoy this, because it does kind of give a little bit more of a modern, like right now, climate kind of layover on top of that story. So it kind of pushes it up into this time period.
Okay.
Up next, we have Where Monsters Lie. Oh, wait, no, we're not. We're not doing it. Don't do it. I'm doing it later. I'm saving it. Don't get excited. We are doing Breath of Shadows, issue 4 from IDW. This is one of IDW's original imprints, so this is one of their unique, like, what's the word for intellectual property, but not that, the licensed property. This is one of their non-licensed stories that are a part of their new kind of realm for that. And this one is all about a musician who has a major drug addiction, and with his drug addiction, he kind of sees, you know, they always talk about, like, people who do a lot of heroin have, like, they feel like worms are crawling over them when they get to that point. So you actually see that visualized in this story. And he has read that there is a pit somewhere in, like, a South American country that some writer made a fictional story about, but people are starting to think maybe it's real, that if you go and you drink from, like, the waters in this pit, that you'll never thirst for drugs again, you'll never have any other addiction. And so he has decided he's going to go out and hire some people, like, to take him there, and his record company is, like, paying for it because they want him to get clean. But that's never how that works out. So the whole entire band is now on it, and he's got different people, like 2 different groups of, like, you've got your archaeologists who kind of want to see it, who may be just in it for some kind of treasure, and then you've got, like, your educators who are, like, trying to, like, researchers who want to see this place. And it's just bad. And honestly, I can't tell if the creepy crawly, like, skin worms that he's seeing are real or not. And the visuals and the way they draw them in this book, like, terrify you. Like, you see them creeping and crawling, and you, like, start to itch while you're reading it, which is a great way to pull you into the story. But also, like, I don't know what's real and what's not, so you almost feel like you're hallucinating while you read it, because you have no idea, like, what it is, and they haven't defined that at all yet. So you're just kind of like, oh my god, this is terrifying, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm okay with it. So,
and this is going to be an ongoing, right?
It'll probably be 5 issues, maybe 6. It seems like most of the IDW originals have kind of been ending at about 5 issues recently, so I'd imagine it's going to be somewhere in that realm.
Okay.
And it could easily end in the next issue, or it could take 2 more. Next, we have Behold Behemoth, issue 5 from Boom Studios. I can't believe that we're already getting to 5 issues of this book. I feel like we're on 2, but here we are. This is the story of a social worker who, at the very beginning of issue 1, we saw his brother had passed away, and he was trying to process what that meant for him. He'd always relied on him, and they'd separated, and they hadn't really talked to each other in a long time. And so he's kind of torn on how he feels, but he has all these dreams about his brother telling him it's his turn to take over and lead, and just kind of goes about his life as a social worker. And he has this one girl whose case he's working, and every time he gets near her, he kind of blacks out, and we don't know if it's... And then something bad happens, and we don't know if it's him or her in the very beginning. And as the story moves on, we find out that there are actually these behemoth monsters, and there is one person who essentially is the behemoth, like calls forth the behemoth, and one person that's kind of the shepherd that looks over that behemoth. And him and this little girl are the two in this world, and they are supposed to be either the end of or the saviors of our society. And over the course of the last like 5 issues, they've kind of been trying to figure out where they fall on saving everyone or killing everyone, and kind of learning to work together. And I like it because you get flashbacks to the past, and then you're in the future, and it just kind of goes back and forth from 3 different points, like from him and his brother, and then like the girl and him like meeting, and then where we are in the future with the possible destruction of the world. So really good. It's written by Tate Bromble, who does a lot of the House of Slaughter books. So if you are enjoying House of Slaughter, I think this is a great book to jump into next if you're looking for more from Tate. Pop Scars, issue 2 from Sumerian. This is such a fun story. This is kind of the like Ocean's 11 for murder instead of thievery, because this is essentially, there are 2 producers, like a director-producer team, who made Jaws, is what basically it is, in the 70s. And now one of them felt like he didn't get credit, and they were wanting to do a remake, and he is offered the opportunity to do the remake, and he doesn't call the other partner back onto it because now he wants to get the credit that he thinks he deserves. So that previous partner now wants to murder him. Well, so do a lot of other people, like a woman who is claiming that one of these men, like this man, is her father, and she needs to murder him. And so the 2 of them team up and kind of build their own Ocean's 11 style like gang of people who are all connected in some way to these people who all want to take them out. And you get like the little trading card powers moments kind of in the first issue, and now in the second issue, you need to be careful with this. I should have warned you that before. In the second issue, she goes to stop one of the directors of it, and one of the people up in command on it. I guess I don't think he's the director, but anyway, she goes to stop one of them from getting to the set, and he has hired a bunch of women to come to his room, and gotten a bunch of drugs, and she's supposed to have this is her first moment of an assignment on this thing, and she completely messes the whole thing up. And it's really great. It's a lot of fun. It's that classic Sumerian, it's off the wall, but really good storytelling at the same time. So if you are looking for something that's just one of those hijinksy things, but also gives you this great little bits and pieces of almost feeling like you're talking about Jaws and references to things that it's just kind of a fun, not as satirical and parody-esque as Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton was, but if you made that more of a serious, almost serious version of that, this is what you would get.
Okay.
But with that Sumerian filter of craziness.
I love this cover. Was I not here for the first issue?
You were not here for the first issue, so now you got to catch up, because it's definitely a book that would have probably been a Phil pick.
Well, you said Ocean's 11.
I know, and that's
a big selling point.
I get to you every time.
Yeah.
Up next, we have By the Horns, Dark Earth, issue 8 from Scout Comics. This is the story of a fantasy world. Volume 1 starts out with a woman whose husband is murdered by what she thinks is a unicorn, and being the town warrior and also kind of the town person who messes everything up, the town screw up, she's okay, well, I'm gonna head out and I'm gonna go kill this unicorn and all the unicorns until I find the unicorn that killed my husband. And in the process, of course, she has a growth arc. She realizes the unicorns aren't the problem, but this evil sorceress is. And in Volume 1, she kind of fights against this evil sorceress. And now Volume 2 has been dealing with the fallout of, if you kill the ultimate bad guy, does that mean that everything in the whole universe just goes to good? Are there going to be some people in different parts of the realm that are going to be mad about it for different reasons? And in this particular issue, we meet yet another character who is upset about her decision to murder the bad guy for however it affected their fallout. And so we kind of see yet another villain rise up and kind of attack her. I love Elodie, the main character. I love her her outfit. I love her personality. I love the way she interacts with her friends, which are like a giant eyeball and this giant cat. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. If you haven't read it yet, just the coloring on it alone is so beautiful and bright. It kind of makes you really happy every time. And every volume so far, like we're on issue 16 technically overall, every volume so far has had like one issue that'll just make you cry. And then just fun action and adventure the rest of the time.
I have to say, when this first came out, and it's not because I thought it was bad, I was just surprised that this has gone on as long as it has. Because when I read those first few issues, I was like, oh, this seems like it's a story that's going to have, like, a precise ending.
Yeah.
And it's going to wrap everything up. I didn't know there was going to be this much world building.
They have continued. Me too. I thought it was going to be a 5-part mini, and it continues. I mean, we're on issue 16. It continues, and every issue it just gets bigger, and it doesn't seem like they're like leading towards any kind of ending. It's kind of like, let's just keep playing in this world forever. And I'm okay with that because I love all the characters. This issue was yet again another one that made me wish I had tissues when I read it. Up next, we have I Hate This Place, issue 8 from Image Comics. I'm going to try to not spoil anything in this issue for Matt, who didn't read it yet. But this is the story of a couple that one of the women in the couple inherits a ranch from her aunt and uncle who have passed away. And her partner decide that they are going to move out to the ranch. And on the first day, they discover that it's not a normal ranch. There's ghosts, there's giant spiders, there's a giant, like, figure in the woods that is coming to kill everybody. Everything is awful. Hence the I hate this place. And also, once you live there, you can never leave. You cannot move away. You can't just abandon it. You are now stuck there as the caretaker of all of this. And over the last 8 issues, these women have been through all of it. And now we found out in this volume, we're kind of seeing that humans are way worse than any other monster that we can find. And that just continues to get worse and worse in this issue. And now we're kind of at the point where some big decisions have to be made by our 2 main characters. And things get really crazy in this issue that almost made me think, did I read the last issue? And I had to slow down and really take in everything because there's a lot going on. So if you have not started it, there is a volume 1 trade. You can jump backwards and go read that volume 1 trade and then catch up because it's such a fun, crazy adventure.
Kyle Starks,
man.
One of those names I see often now, and every book that seems to have his name on it is popular.
Which is funny because I was really thinking about it because Kyle Starks, did a lot of Rick and Morty stuff. Mm-hmm. And actually was thinking about him the other day. And one of the Bat fan members back in Austin, I actually met Kyle Starks back at Staple years and years ago.
Oh, really?
And I was like, we had actually met Kyle Starks back when he had only done Rick and Morty. And I remember being like, oh, I'm not really a Rick and Morty fan. But, like, your stuff sounds cool.
Yeah.
And he was so nice. And I think he had done one other book, and I had read that one. It was the small indie book. And so now I'm like, man, to, like, go back in time now and, like, be like, hey, can we talk about all the things you're going to do in the future? Because I'm a really big fan of all of them. Up next, we have Junkrabbit, issue 2 from Image Comics and their Shadowline imprint. And Junkrabbit 1 was a pick of the week, and this could definitely continue to build this world in a way where I think that this could be a pick of the week all the time kind of book, too. This is the story of a world where we have gotten so wasteful in everything that we just keep throwing it out, that landfills overfill, we have nowhere to go. So the extremely rich move off the planet to space, and then like the middle class and up live in these dome cities, and everybody else is just left to live amongst the trash. And in issue 1, some video, like YouTube kind of star on from the dome city comes out to the junk world and is of course being obnoxious and doing all these terrible things, and he ends up murdered. And now the people in the Dome City are trying to figure out who did it and why, and of course they just automatically blame the people who live amongst the waste. Meanwhile, our 2 main characters are sisters who are on their own, and they're trying to run their dad's shop to keep themselves alive and eating and everything because it's just the 2 of them now. And one of the sisters has a boyfriend who, of course, the other sister has been in love with their whole life, so you get all this drama amongst that. But they are just kind of trying to live their lives and figure out, like, how they're going to survive, if they're going to move into the Dome City, if they're going to live in this world. And these paths kind of cross with our other story, because in the junk world, there has been a superhero, like vigilante kind of character that existed years ago called the Junk Rabbit. And suddenly the Junk Rabbit is back and is taking out all these people coming from the Dome Cities, threatening the waste people, like the people of the waste world. And we don't know who it is. Maybe one of our main characters could be it. I don't know. I'm honestly trying to figure it out. You're literally like looking at like the Junk Rabbit, and there's like scenes where the Junk Rabbit is like in the background and they might be like doing something, and I'm like, ooh, is that like this? Like, I'm like piecing clues together right now, 2 issues in, trying to figure out who it is. And they're really good at kind of like throwing you off. Like, somebody will walk in with a scratch like right where the Junk Rabbit got hit, and you're like, that's the Junk Rabbit. And then you're like, but nothing else lines up but that. And then, like, somebody else, like, everything lines up for it. And you're like, but then that doesn't make any sense because I swear. So you're, like, confused about who it could be. And it's kind of one of those, like, we are all going to end up being, like, legion against the rich people who've pushed us down maybe all this time. I don't know, but I'm here for a rebellion. And it's going to be great. So if you haven't read Junk Rabbit yet, jump on it. It's honestly, it's my favorite thing, I think, on the Shadowline imprint at Image so far. For sure. So... up next, we have Godfell, issue 3 from Vault Comics. Also, thanks, Vault, for the shout out on our free comic book day and asking and telling us that they were hoping it went well and all of that. They commented on our Instagram about it, so I'm super thank you for always supporting us, Vault. We love you guys. This is one of those books. I always say you wait until the 3rd issue to see. This is also one that there's like some stuff in the background that you might need to be careful about, because this is, I always say in the 3rd issue is like the turn where if you aren't sure about a book, like that's going to be the one. And when I read issue 1, and we talked about this because you read issue 1 as well, we were like, that had a lot of like big adventure world, like what is going on, like a lot of the over the top narration almost. And, we weren't really sure about it, but this is the story of a girl who is a soldier in a war, and she wants out of the war, and at the same time, a giant god has fallen. So if you're like a fan of We Only Find Them When They're Dead, this is like a god that size has fallen to the earth. And what do we do in human society when a resource becomes available to us? We all exploit it as quickly as possible. So people have moved into the insides of this god, like hollowed them out and are living inside of them. And like people are selling off the meat, people are selling off the blood, all these people are doing different things. And this soldier who wants to go home to her family ends up picking up an orphan girl, like a teenage girl, 20-something-year-old girl that's been orphaned that is also in need of some assistance. And so now the two of them, the only way they can get where they're going is to travel through the god. And we are learning that each part of the thing is filled with a different group of people, and most of them are terrible so far for whatever reason. And in this particular issue, we have come to the people who live in the love zone of the god. And you found a safe space, like you're not necessarily in that. And this is definitely a big sign of that, because when we think that we're in, like, we finally start trusting these people, maybe love isn't exactly what they mean is their best intention. And again, this is one of those where I'm like, I read to the 3rd issue, and on issue 1, I was like, I don't know, because I don't like the like high fantasy language, and I don't like that. And that kind of was those first 3 pages. I remember even saying, like, after the first 3 pages, that kind of disappeared, and I really liked the characters that we got. And now I'm so invested in this. Like, I want a map. I want Vault. Like, if you haven't printed the rest of this, like, can you print a map of the god and like what parts we've been through, like at the back of each issue, like the body, because as we go through each issue, it's so cool to see like who's using it and for what. And like sometimes I'm just like, I just want to see where they're going, like I just want to know where they are on the body and how much further we have to go, and like kind of start guessing like what's going to be in like the fingers or what's going to be here. I'm so invested in this story at this point now, and I cannot wait to see what happens in the future issues, because these characters are fantastic. And we learned in this one that there is sort of a, if you want to bring down all of the terrible people in this world, which is kind of what our soldier is at. Like, she's like, I want the wars to end. I want all of these people who are greedy and terrible to, like, not be in charge anymore. And this person that she goes to for this prophecy was like, that's great and it could happen, but you can never be the one to do it. But you could be the one to find the one to do it, and you may already have, but it may also be too late. And we don't know what that means,
Right.
and like where it's all pieced together, and what you think it means and what's happening could be completely different by the end of this issue. And going into the next one, every issue of this ends on such great cliffhangers that you're always like, okay, is it next month already? Which I think Vault, as like the editors, Adrian and team at Vault, I think are some of the best editors for hitting those points on all of their books. Like every time I end an issue of a Vault comic, I'm like, all right, next month, let's go. Like, here we are.
Yeah.
So they're really killing it with working on their editing of like making sure that every book ends on that upbeat that makes you want to go forward. And this series at issue 3, I'm 100% in.
There you go. The 3-issue rule in effect.
Up next, we've got Dhalia in the Dark, issue 5 from Madcave, and this is the Press Shann variant cover, which all but one issue so far of Dhalia in the Dark has had a Press Shann variant cover, which is super cool because I love their art. It's all the cover Bs, okay. Except for one, which was like issue 3 or something like that. And this is another story that has the fantasy storytelling aspects, but isn't necessarily like in a fantasy world. This is a guy is in the regular human world. He works as kind of a bounty hunter. He works for a mob boss, and he's constantly working to bring out like whatever the mob boss tells him to. And of course, he's ruined all of his chances. He's kind of on that last like, if you don't do this, you're gonna be dead kind of thing. And you don't have any money. And so he takes this last job, and he's the secondary partner on it. He's not even the lead on the job. And they're supposed to be transporting this package across. Turns out the package, not a package of stuff. It is a literal fairy princess. And the Fae people are at war, and they are trying to bring that war over into our world. And we're not really sure which side the mob boss falls on, because in every issue he's playing every side. So I have no idea, like, who he's actually fighting for in this book and what he's actually... I think he's just in it for money, so he's trying to figure out, like, which side's gonna... He's hedging all of his bets. But our main character, the reason he always messes things up in this point in his life is because he's trying to be a good person, and he's trying to come out on the right side. And so now, even though he knows that the package is a person, he's now decided his job is to protect this person. And he's kind of going against literally everybody in the book now. Trying to figure out the right thing and do the right thing. And so you've gotten a really cool adventure story out of this now. And I just put together in this issue that his last name is Dhalia. And so he is the Dhalia in the Dark because he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
So, subtle meaning, name, super cool. Loving it. You should definitely pick it up if you haven't checked it out. Up next, Grimm, issue 10 from Boom Studios. Can you believe we're already on issue 10 of Grimm?
I will be more excited when it gets closer to like 20 or 30. Like, I want to really see this thing go on for a while.
And I think we will, because it's just continuing to open up. Like, I think this might be our trade break, because I know the first trade was 1 through 5. And so this might be our next trade break point, and the cliffhanger at the end of this would definitely be good for that. But this is a story about a girl named Jessica who is a Grim Reaper. And in this world, like, there's lots of Reapers who come out and collect souls. And in the very first issue of the series, Jessica kind of messes up. And a human is able to see her. She loses her sight. And she kind of ends up on this downward spiral of breaking all the rules and kind of figuring out that she is actually different from every other Reaper, because while every other Reaper can remember the moment they were born, Jess can only remember the moment that she died. And so she is trying to figure out all this stuff, and it's been crazy. She's got these 2 buddies. Now we've met a 3rd character in this arc who's kind of been traveling with them, who is like the coolest. Like, she looks like the Jessie Quick skater like outfit from the Bombshell time period. But we have found out that Jess has some severe connections to the afterlife and the people in charge. And now this is kind of like who's going to take over the afterlife situation. And the more embedded in it and trying to solve things she gets, the more Jess kind of messes it up. And I can't wait to see whether or not she gets out of this alive. or dead, I guess is the way the case should be. But also, like, we're at a point now where, like, souls aren't being collected because of all this, like, war between these reapers that is happening. And so we're going to see if life and death are ever actually resolved. And I mean that literally, because life and death are both personified as people in this story. So up next, we have Blue Book issue 3 from Dark Horse Comics. This is the newest, not anymore. This is the most recent James Tynion book until today, or this week's live stream. So this is all about aliens, and what I love about this book is that it is actual, like, real stories of aliens that they are recounting through comic books. And in this one, the main story in all of these issues has been the story of a couple that you can look up. You can follow the story on like actual, like, alien blogs or just Wikipedia. But this is a story of a couple who was driving home one night in the 1960s and could not suddenly remember. They saw a bunch of lights, and then they lost like 4 hours of their life. They don't remember what happened. They got home. All this weird stuff was around. They don't know what it was. Come to find out, like, through hypnotists and different research, they eventually figure out that they were abducted by aliens. And this is kind of the story that you'll read if you read their actual true story. It went through all of the same exact order. It actually flows, like, almost perfectly in line with the Wikipedia article. So it's like you can read the Cliff Notes while you're going. And then, of course, they expand on the story. And then at the back each month, there is a different story that's always done by a different artist. And this one was very, very confusing and crazy, but it's about a person who is, like, was known as, like, the eater, essentially. Like, it was like a man who was born and he couldn't stop eating. And the story is actually the story of the French Revolution. They actually are not talking about this person at all. They're like, I'm going to tell you the story of this French word that I don't know how to say. And they're, like, telling you that that's what they're going to say. And then it just goes into the story of the French Revolution. And you get the entirety of it. You get all the bad decisions. But in the background of every panel of every page, there's, like, almost a Where's Waldo to find, like, this guy as he's growing up. And he's just, like, eating in the background of every panel. As you go through the revolution, which, of course, the French Revolution was about the poor not having the food, you know. And so it's interesting to see, like, him going through these panels where they're talking about people not having any food, and he's, like, finding something of some sort to eat in the panel. And then at the very end, it kind of works its way back in a really strange way. And they're like, and that's the story. And I'm like, huh? I was like, that was the story? But we didn't talk about that guy at all. And then I like sat there and thought about it, and I was like, that was a really cool way to do that story, though. Because it is so Where's Waldo? And then you're just like, and then this happened, and he wondered if he ever really had, like, any desire, like, if that hunger was ever really his or something like that. Right. And then you, like, see this, like, ending panel set, and you're like, whoa, it's crazy. All the stories in this have been super crazy. If you haven't read it yet, like, read Blue Book. Again, you get an ongoing story, and then the backstories don't connect at all. Okay.
Yeah, all is right in the world when Michael Avon Oeming is doing art. He's low-key, I think, one of my favorite artists.
That's fair.
You know, he's got that, like, old-school pulpy kind of style.
I like that. That's why I like, and we're going to talk about her later, the artist on Love Everlasting right now. Okay. I love that for that same Darwin. She is Darwin Cook
Darwin
style.
Cook, that's the style, yeah.
I love that. Up next, Indigo Children issue 2, which, of course, I know you read issue 1. It was one of your picks of the week, and you didn't get to grab this one yet, so you haven't read this issue 2, but this is from Image Comics. And we'll just keep talking about aliens. Issue 1 of this kind of brought us into a world where we found out what Indigo Children were, which were kids who were researched on because they may or may not be these aliens. And they were all put in this facility, and they slowly, over a course of time, were separated and kind of made to forget who they were. And issue 1 taught us about Indigo Prime, who was the leader of all of these kids and the person who has the most powers. And in issue 2, we are actually introduced to another one of the Indigo Children. And we see what his powers are. before he even realizes that he has them. And we see them kind of building up their team. All the Indigo children are essentially coming back together, and their belief is that they need to save the world, that was their mission. But of course, humans are convinced that these alien type children have been brought here to kill us all. So we'll see which way this goes. Are they here to save us in the manner that we would want to be saved? Are they here in that, like, we must save you from yourselves by destroying you kind of situation? I guess we're going to find out. But this has been a fun book, and I'm just really excited that every week I feel like we see more and more books that have Dee Knuff on coloring.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's like 8 or 9 on the shelf right now, and I know last year around this time Dee told us he didn't think he'd get nominated for an Eisner until he had a ton of books on the shelf, and guess what? Now you do. So maybe we'll see some nominations for the great coloring that Dee's been doing this year. Up next, we've got Local Man, issue 3 from Image Comics. This is the story of a superhero who has messed up, and for some reason, and we don't know yet still what he did, right? He's messed up as of like this issue. I think we still don't know. He messed up, and he has not accomplished something, or he failed at something. And so all of the superheroes, like the Justice League essentially, and I'm going to say more like what was like the Image team, like Youngblood or one of those.
Yeah, one of those. So, it's basically every superhero team.
Yeah. He's been kicked out of that, and he's gone home, and it's one of those you can't go home kind of books, because the second he gets home, everybody's like, oh, well, I hated you because you were a terrible superhero. And then you have the people who are like, I just hate you because I hated you when you were a kid. You were like a punk kid. And then you've got the superheroes who are like, you're not allowed to do anything. If you do any kind of superheroing or detective work or anything at all, like, we'll arrest you and you'll go to jail.
You can't even use a shield anymore.
Yeah.
Like in the first issue, he uses a trash can as a shield in a bar fight. And they're like, nope, you can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, he has like a little robot thing in that issue too that's supposed to follow him around and like tell him that he's violating the rules. And in this issue, in the first issue, a villain that he grew up with, who also was just kind of trying to make his name as a villain over time, is killed. And now he's kind of trying to solve that murder. And he's not allowed to do any investigating, so he's trying to do it on the down low. It's not working. And in this issue, he ends up going to meet somebody else who's like a retired villain. She's now writing books about how she recovered from being this evil villain. And it just kind of opens him up to even more problems. And maybe just opened up all of us to a very, very big problem for the story. I'm super excited about. And then the flip side is you actually get the stories of their superhero team told very much like a 90s Image comic. It's most... This issue I love, because they're in the middle of a fight, and he's fighting with the girl that's got like the really revealing 90s style outfit, and he's like, why do you dress like that? And she's like, well, and like some guy comes up to fight her, and he like stops and is staring at her, and she's like, well, I do it 1 because it gives me at least a 1 second head start, while men have that reaction when they see it. She's like, and 2, my power is to absorb sunlight. So the more, like, less clothing I have on, the more sunlight I can absorb. And so they kind of, like, make fun of the 90s outfits that they, like, force the girls into. And she's like, and try to, like, give it a meaning. But she's like, but at the end of the day, it was just done for, like, the male gaze. And I'm like, I love that. Like, you had to throw in a whole issue of just this woman talking about how terrible the outfit choices were in the 90s. Congratulations. Good job.
Yeah, it is like, especially too if you can accept that those comics were predominantly bad, and let's just accept and make fun of them and enjoy that making fun of them, because
and then put that modern like narrative storytelling on top of it. Like, it's like, okay, let's have a retrospective to what we did there, and then like let's build the story out from there. Like, okay, some of these people are going to need some therapy after they, like, were 90s superheroes, and let's give them that time. Up next, we have Kaya, issue 7 from Image Comics. And I love they post that this is a new story arc on here, so that you know. So this whole second story arc has had that so far. This is the story of a young girl who, her whole entire village is destroyed. And she chooses to save, she's only able to save herself and her little brother. And her little brother is believed to be the chosen one, We have since found out some of the backstory that he might be like the backup chosen one. He doesn't necessarily know that, but we as readers do. And they have been on this adventure to try to get him to the ancients who will train him how to be the chosen one. And in the last issue, he was kidnapped by some people who have been after Kaya and her brother this whole time. And so now Kaya is on a war path to save her brother and from whoever took him. And of course, she's got her lizard riders who have been helping her along the way, and she's just completely upset. Like, nobody is good enough to save her brother except for her, and so she's kind of like, I have both failed, and yet I have to do this right before it's too late. This book's just fantastic, and it's a great actual all-ages story. This is one of those where I have 7-year-old subscribers, and I have 57-year-old subscribers, and everybody's loving it for all the same reasons, actually. So jump into it no matter your age. And there is a trade for Volume 1 already out, so if you didn't catch it, you can.
Yeah, it's one that I always enjoy reading. It's usually at the top of my pile anytime it comes out. And, it's Wes Craig, I was a big fan of Deadly Class when he was doing the art on that, so just to see him now writing and doing the art.
It's fantastic.
Magical.
And killing it. That's another book I hope we see some Eisner nominations for. Up next, we have Gangster as Barista, issue 2 from Black Mask Comics. And this is the story of a girl who used to be a thief. And she used to be a thief, and now she works at a coffee shop, and she's trying to get her life in order. And of course, somebody comes in and attempts to rob the coffee shop, and they steal all this. They've already stolen all this money. They have a bag full of money. Issue 1, they come in, they're trying to get some more. All this stuff goes down, and they end up leaving without their bag of money. She takes it because she's like, well, what's going to go wrong? And the guy that's the obnoxious guy at the coffee shop is who they think, oh, we're going to blame, the thieves are oh, that guy, we remember him because he's obnoxious. And so now they've put a death threat on this guy. They're coming back, and they're like, if you don't have our money, we're going to kill you. And she's like, the world's not really losing anything. And then she's like, no, I'm trying to be a good person. So now she's trying to get this money and, save this guy. Well, on her way home, when she has all the money in her backpack, somebody robs her in the parking lot, and it is a guy who is known as Pepperoni because he is a homeless man who sits outside of the pizza place and tells everybody, oh, well, if they give him $1, he's like, well, it's $1.50 for pepperoni. And that's what he says to everybody to try to get more money. And so everybody hates him. He steals all her money. He buys a velour suit and tickets to see Wicked. And she's like, I have got to stop this guy. This is insane. And so she goes on a crazy adventure trying to stop the guy, trying to get her money back. And things don't work out the way she would hope. And the people who come for her and the money end up being her old crew. So things are going to get crazy in issue 3. It is a Black Mask comic, so do know that it does have slow releases. A lot of people are like, oh, did that series not keep going? What's going on with it? Are always confused. A lot of the smaller presses only print, they don't print every month. It's every other month or every couple of months. So, get into it and then know that you might, hold tight a little bit. There might be some delays from the smaller presses, but it's still worth it. You should read it. Speaking of Deacon Enough on coloring, Door to Door, Night by Night, issue 5 from Vault Comics. This is a story about a team of people who go from small town to small town and raise money for the local volunteer fire department. And I still don't know if they've actually ever really raised money for a volunteer fire department or if it's some scam that they're running, but it is a thing that they do. And in the very first issue, they pick up somebody who's traveling along near them and needs a ride, and they're like, you can ride with us, but this is where we're going. And so she ends up going with them and helping them out on their mission in the next town. But then we find out that she's actually a monster slayer. And now that they've been awoken to the concept of monsters, they now have to become monster slayers too. And so now, even though she's not with them anymore, every time they go traveling to different towns, they end up figuring out that there's creatures of different kinds in each town. And in this one, they have found some mermaid type creatures, and we never know what's real and what's not in this story, which is kind of one of the things that I like, because you always kind of see them as real people until they're not. And this issue was super crazy because it's like, again, it's like mermaids, but they look like fish monster creatures until you get under the water. I don't know where this is going. Honestly, everything's kind of like a standalone issue, like almost anthology-esque, but it's always been told as an overall story, and so I'm really excited to see where it's going. I just don't know where that's going to be, and I can't wait. Up next, Planet 59 from Outer Space, issue 2 from Drin Productions, and this is the story of a young girl. A girl in her, like, she's not young. She's like 20s, 30s, 40s. I don't know. She's just a woman. I don't know how old she is. But she's a woman who is a monster hunter of some sort and is kind of aware that monsters exist, at least. And in issue 1, you see her kind of battling werewolves and things like that. And then at the end, she's just trying to go, like, have a basic life, like, go get coffee or something. And she drops her cell phone and it breaks. And in the process or at the same time, some aliens figure out that the way to invade the planet Earth is to give the planet Earth, like the Earthlings, but I'm just going to say the planet Earth people, like I don't know what we're called, to give Earthlings a virus that turns them into rage monsters through their cell phones. So essentially create zombieism through cell phone technology. And so in like the first 10 minutes, they're like, we're already at 60% capacity of people who are consumed by this disease because everybody's on their cell phone. But she broke hers, so she's not. So now she's like the only person essentially who's not affected by this disease, and she's trying to figure out how to stop this whole thing from going on. And she's like, it's just me. Like, and every time she gets somebody like recruited with her, they're like, let us look up like what's going on. And then they get on their phone. So I'm sure she's going to very soon figure out what the message, like what's going on. But we'll see.
There's this publisher has a comic called Flesh Eating Cheerleaders from Outer Space.
Yes.
I kind of want to read that one.
You should. Because I think it's going to be fun. I haven't read it yet, but I'm super excited to see what that is too.
Oh, there's a 3-page preview
in it. That's why I'm like, I'm kind of interested because I've seen the preview. You're like, I'm going to read that right now.
I'll at least read the 3-page preview. You know. I'm curious.
Dude, it's so hard for me when I read the previews because then I'm like, I want the whole thing now. Like, and then I'm so impatient. Up next, we have Rogue State issue 3, also from Black Mask, in Phil's favorite prestige format oversized book.
You can win me over with the prestige format. That's all it takes.
And this is done, this comes to us from the same team that did Calexit. So just know when you go into this that you're picking it up, this is going to be a politically charged comic book, which most are like subtly political. This is like a politically charged comic. And this is, like, the tagline of this comic is, what if Americans refuse to be governed? And in issue 1, we find out that we're living in a world that is all militia based. Like, there's if you wanna police your community in your way, go for it. We all just do whatever we want. And in this issue, we finally learn some backstory about some of our characters, and we are kind of learning who this girl that we've been following is, and what her story is. And she was kind of the one who, at the very beginning, when everything was turning in the direction that it is now, for the book, she was kind of the one who was like, oh, I'm all in. Like, she was the chief of police. She was like, or like not the chief of police, but like the all-star police officer. She was like, I'm 100% in. Whatever this is, I'm for it. And you see her watch what she thinks she's agreeing with turn into what is actually happening, and you kind of see her decline over the issue of how she feels her connection to this going, and we kind of see where she ends up on that. And it's such an interesting thing to see. This is how people perceive what is happening versus this is how, once they see what it actually, like the impact and the fallout of things actually are, how that actually will change to a completely different thing. And I loved watching her process go through it. Like, at the very beginning, I was like, who is this character and why, like, do I hate her? And then at the end, I was like, oh, I see what you're doing here. All right, we're really gonna pull this up. But if you've never read Cal Exit, I strongly recommend you grab that trade, because it is a strongly good story. There is also a free comic book day issue from 2 years ago, and I still have some if you need a Cal Exit free comic book day issue. And then check out Rogue State. It's only in prestige format. Sorry you don't get your other options, but it's worth it because you get some really cool big spreads in this book. Up next, we have issue 6 of Sulphur Wells from Blood Moon Comics. This is the story of a small town that is called Sulphur Wells because it is filled with a bunch of wells that are sulfuric water. And this is a group of friends who have learned that there's a lot of history in the town of, like, dryads, I guess. Is that the water nymph kind of people? Anyway, there's a lot of, like, water nymph type people that live in their river. And there's always been these myths of it, and now they've kind of been seeing them over and over again. And these 3 friends have tried to take it upon themselves to figure out what's real and what isn't about the history. And now, because of that, they've actually been recruited by these people to kind of help with recovering some of their lost home and some of their lost artifacts and things. This is one of those, I didn't think it was going to be a long series. I thought it was going to kind of be like a 3-part, 4-part book where we just saw some information and then we moved on from there. And now we're 6 issues in, and we're just now starting to get to, like, the big adventure. And so I think this might be one of the longest running, like, Blood Moon titles that I've seen. And it's super cool because, again, in the first issue, like, the first issue just evaluates what the town is and kind of gives you the history of the town. Like, it's like 4 little mini parts about it that's, like, different things about the town and, like, everybody in it. And then each issue has a map, and the map kind of adds more little things that we learned in the last issue to it. And I remember reading issue 1, and it was when Josh was on the live stream with me when we first got here. And we were both like, we don't know what this book is, but we know that this town has a lot of really cool history. Like, we don't know what this is supposed to be about, but we're really into the town history. And now all of that history has come back to play into the story somehow. And I'm super into what they're doing with it and how they're trying to piece it all together. And I think that was an interesting way to go about it. Like, I don't know if it probably, like, if it would have, like, gained more readers to do that when you're a small press, to, like, kind of tell your town history and build up the world before you tell the story. But it definitely was an interesting turn for me and has kept me captivated, because now I'm like, oh, this was like that history part. Like, each time I'm like, right. Oh, I know where this is going. Like, this is going to connect back to that. And so I think it was an interesting storytelling mechanism, and I can't wait to see how this all, like, eventually wraps up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised it's gone as long as it has.
Yeah. Up next, we've got Torrent, issue 3 from Image Comics. And this, I love that they did the frame variant, since we're talking about all these, like, 90s kind of styles. This is a woman who is a superhero, and her family is killed by a supervillain who learned her identity, and now she has been trying to do it the right way to get back at them. So she kind of went to the Justice League, essentially, in issue 2. And I don't know if you read issue 2. I know you read issue 1, but I don't know if you got to 2.
I don't think I read issue 2.
She went to the Justice League, essentially, in issue 2 and was like, hey, can you help me? And they didn't. So she went to the police at the second half of issue 2 and was like, hey, here's all the information. And they were like, we can't help you. You're a superhero. So at the end of issue 2, she has that, like, Civil War moment of, like, going in front of the media and, like, unmasking herself and telling the whole world who she is. So this one kind of picks up with her, like, okay, I'm a civilian now. Now you have all the information. You know my identity. Like, solve the mystery. And they're like, oh, well, we still can't help you because when you were a superhero and you got all that information, like, that's like the police doing it without a warrant. And she's like, so I just followed all of your rules for nothing. And they're like, well, I don't know what you want from us. Like, we need witnesses. We need people that are acquired the correct way. And she's like, and they're like, so we're not going to do anything for you. And she's like, well, then turns out I'm still a superhero. And she gets really, and they even use the Punisher logo. I don't know how they got away with how close that is to it on the back, because she goes in at one point and she's like, well, this is America, and I just got a settlement for my family dying, so I'm just going to buy a bunch of guns and become the Punisher and kill everybody that went against me, and let them know that I'm not playing around anymore. And so now she's kind of become like this anti-hero, and she's a super cool character. I cannot wait to see more of her. Like, just keep it going, because I love her attitude of like, my family is all that mattered to me, and I was a hero, and now my family is gone, and so what's the point? And she's killing it, literally.
I thought maybe this was an imprint logo, but it's not.
It's just
for the comic.
Yeah, it's just for the frame variant thing.
I got excited for a second.
You're like, oh,
new
yes,
imprint, let's go. Who's running this one?
No, I wish we could totally have another one. What's the furthest place from here? Issue 12 from Image, and this is one of those books. It's Matthew Rosenberg and Tyler Boss, who we both will tell you are just the all-star team when they're together, and also solely are fantastic. Mm-hmm. This is essentially the Warriors. It's a post-apocalyptic world, but nobody lives after the age of 18. You kind of wander off into the woods and nobody knows what happens to you. So all of the young people have created their own little tribes of groups, like gangs or whatever, and they're all themed around different things, and you pick your god. Our main tribe has been people who lived in a record store, so records were their gods. They each picked like the record that identified them. In the very first issue, we have a girl who is pregnant, who is also about to turn 18, who wanders off. We have no idea how she's pregnant. We have no idea what happens to her. And so finally, in this arc, we have actually been following her story of what happened to her when she wandered off. And I'm thinking we're going to actually maybe learn whether or not there is something beyond the beyond. Whether that's beyond the age of 18, beyond the space that they've been able to live in. She's kind of starting to learn about people groups that they never knew existed, like houses and stuff. And we do get a little glimpse of something to do with our elders, who have kind of been our secret bad guys this whole time. It's fantastic. If you haven't read it, you should. I know there was a lot of excitement for it when it first came out, because it was going to have vinyls, and then there was the vinyl shortage, so it was really hard for those to get made. But even if you never get a vinyl record to go with it, put on your own favorite songs and read this comic, because it's great.
Or they posted all the songs online, because they were like, hey, we're sorry we messed up with the shortage of vinyl. Here's the songs in MP3 form.
Oh, there you go. Ooh, yeah. So you were able to get that song that you wanted? I know you really wanted that new song.
Yeah, they had a lot of good bands. I don't know if he's friends with some of those bands, or he was just like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to make a song for it? Yeah, I was pretty happy with that. More music and comics together. I feel like we're doing a really great job. I want to amp it up even more, though. Let's take it to that next step. I even like it, too. There's some artists and writers who will post like what they were listening to.
Mm-hmm. When they wrote.
I know when Philip Kennedy Johnson is writing, he's going to be doing Hulk, and he was like, yeah, every time I wrote an issue, I posted, because he's like, I was very influenced by metal music for this Hulk run, so it's like every metal song I listened to, I was just like posting and telling people which metal songs they should listen to while they're reading Hulk, and I was like, that's awesome.
I'm glad that more and more people are doing that. In the height of the young adult craze, like when Twilight and all those first came out, that was a big thing for young adult writers, was to post your playlist. And so I'm glad we're seeing more and more writers of different kinds continuing to do that, because I love playlists.
I would love to know what the writer for Twilight was listening to.
Dude, you can find it online.
Really?
Yeah, there's playlists for every book.
I'd be curious to know what the influences were for that.
Yeah. I'm going to toss this your way. I'll talk about this issue, but I know this was one of your favorite stories when it first came out. This is the one with Faye.
I don't remember this one.
Oh my god, this was your pick of the week for both issue 1 and issue 2. Okay, so hold it up.
Really?
I'll just talk about it. Yeah. This is Almighty. This is the story of a girl who was kidnapped, and she is... a woman whose name is Faye comes and rescues her.
Oh.
And
yeah.
the girl is crazy, your ultimate, awesome, I'll be back, Arnold kind of moment, hero. But she comes in and she saves her from this group of people that have kidnapped her, and they're on the road back to wherever this girl is from. And in the process, Faye was attacked by somebody, and she is now she's having like some kind of like reaction to it. And so the only place they can go into is into a place called Zone 1. And Zone 1 is where nobody is supposed to go ever again, because that's where the initial outbreak that kind of destroyed the whole world started. And so the only thing that's left in there are the people who have been infected by it. And we actually get to see our first glimpse of that in this issue, because our characters are out there like looking for medicine, doing stuff, and they interact with this creepy thing who's like, you hear the sound of bugs like flying, like flies flying towards you, and then you look back and there's a person there, and he's like scary and gross. And anyway, they get followed back by this person, and we learn all about the monsters that lie in Zone 1, and there may or may not be a way out, and yet we still have to deal with all the humans who are after them. So if you have not started this book, this is one that a lot of people read issue 1 and were like, I had no idea what this was, and now I'm obsessed with like this character and the story. I want to know where it's going. Jump in on this. I think this is going to be one that you're going to regret that you missed if you don't pick it up before it ends. So.
Yeah, I was confused by what made me think. I was like, I don't remember this book at all, because in those first 2 issues, there's no monsters of any sort.
No monsters.
So I'm like sitting here and I'm like, I don't remember these monsters at all.
No, because we're in Zone 1 now. Things are getting weird.
The first two issues were more. It's just like, yes, this is post-apocalyptic, but that's as far as this really goes. So
now we got some weird creatures, and I do not know. I don't want to tell you what they are, and I don't want to tell you where they're. I don't know if I know everything. We just know what some crazy person told us. That's all we know. Up next, we have Blood Tree, issue 4 from Image Comics. This is Peter Tomasi's darkest story I think I've ever read from Peter Tomasi. This is all about a detective who is investigating a murder mystery. We have a serial killer who is making people look like angels by literally sewing like angel wings from bird feathers onto them. And the detective has been trying to piece it all together. We're slowly getting some clues. And in this issue, we actually get the biggest clue that we've ever gotten, because we find files of what he's been doing. And so we learn that this guy has been hunting down people who have a lineage of serial killers. So it's not that any of the people he's killing have done anything wrong. He's kind of just trying to evaluate, like he thinks like evil is a line through your family, and it's a 50-50 chance that you could be just as bad as the people before you. And we learn some interesting ties between our detective and the serial killer and his mission in this issue that make you like, this is one of those books that when you're reading it, you're kind of like on the edge of your seat, like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Like, I want to get, like, we got to solve this case, like, what's going on? And then we're here now. I think if you're fans of shows like Dexter and stuff like that, where you're in the mind of both the serial killer and, like, the person trying to stop serial killers, you're going to kind of really enjoy this book, because you do get glimpses into that slow, like, sense of, I'm going to solve this case, but then, like, the case goes in a different direction, and you get some more and more details each time, and it's awesome. Anyway, it's Peter Tomasi. He's a great writer. Of course it's going to be good.
Yeah. Because I think I've only read the first 2, but I got, like, True Detective vibes a little bit.
Which I've heard a lot of great things about. I've never seen that show.
I've only seen that first season because it wrapped up, and I was like, this was one of the single greatest seasons of television, and I don't want to see anything else to sully it. So I only ever watched that first season. But I do want to eventually sit down and watch all the rest, because I've heard great things about some of the newer seasons.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a mixed bag of things, but yeah.
People bring it up all the time, and I'm like, maybe someday I'll watch like an episode and see what it is.
Yeah.
Up next, speaking of detectives, we have Hollowed, issue 2 from Keenspot. This is about a guy who is a detective, and there's a weird, almost like Seven style murder going on, and they keep putting people in these positions of like the most elated that you could be. Like, they want that the killer is like trying to get them to the happiest that they could be when he kills them, so that they have that like sense of elation on their face. And in issue 1, the main detective's partner is killed, And issue 2 brings in a new person who he's going to have to accept as his partner. And he hates this person because he's from Buffalo. Like, the story takes place in Buffalo, and this guy's from Chicago. And so they immediately don't like each other for that reason alone. But also, the guy's dad is the governor of Illinois. And so he's like, oh, so you got your position because of your daddy, so I had to work my way up here. So he, like, just immediately hates this guy. And it's like, the chief is like, well, it doesn't matter. This guy's been working on this case in Chicago forever, and now the guy's here, so y'all have to work together. And so you've got this instant tension between these two characters, and yet they both want to stop this killer for the same reasons. And so you've got a great dynamic for a team to hate each other and for you to also not trust each other. And so I'm kind of curious to see where this is going to go. Again, this is we have 2 like Keen Spot books that have absolutely no parody element to them going on right now. And this is one of them. And it's very strange. I keep waiting for like the punchline when I read it. And then I'm so excited that there's not one. Like, I'm just happy to see like a non-parody book, a non-satire book coming from them, because it's a great detective story so far. And I like the weird like coloration that they blend into it.
Yeah, I do really like the colors. Mm-hmm. It's just, again, Keen Spot's one of those ones where I see it and I'm like, oh, it's going to be a parody of something else. So I usually stray away from Keen Spot books.
Not a parody. Actually a story, and actually really great. So if you're just looking for a good detective story, that's not a parody. Up next, Dead Romans, issue 2 from Image and the Shadowline imprint. And this is the story of, honestly, this feels very much, I think I said this on issue 1, this feels like the King Arthur movie that had Clive Owens and Keira Knightley in it.
Yeah.
It feels exactly like that. Because it's the story of some Roman soldiers. They're in Germania. They're trying to, like, take over. This is when they're trying to take over the future Germany. And we're at the point where we have this one woman who is very much the Guinevere of the King Arthur movie. But she is this woman that is in love with, the leader is in love with. And she is vowed to, she's kind of like in that same way where she was like the wildling, essentially, like Keira Knightley was. She's kind of like somebody that's from this area and is kind of this wildling version. And she's promised to protect this brigade as they go through. And so the Germanian soldiers have now surrounded this group, and they're kind of picking them off. And they're like, we have to run away. And she's like, are you going to run away? Is that what you're going to do? Because that's not what I'm going to do. So if y'all leave, then I will fight these people by myself, because I made us like a promise that I will do it. And so she like loads up all her own weapons and is just like walking off to go to battle by herself. It's so funny because in issue 1, I was like, I don't know, like I've read a lot of Roman history. I don't know if I really need like a book about like the Roman army. Like, cool, the SPQR. I'm not sure like I need to go back to Roman army stories. And now in this one where she's just like, did I hear all of you men talking about running away? Fine, I'll just do it myself. And I was like, okay, wait, now I'm in. Wait, this is her story? Yeah. This is going to be the story of this girl taking out this entire army all on her own? All right, I'm in. You've changed my mind. I do need this story now. And I like the way it looks. It's the perfect art style for something that's about the Roman Empire. The art really does actually almost even feel like the way that movie was shot. Yeah. The cinematography essentially of these panels. And so I really enjoy this character, and so I'm kind of like, I will follow. I will not retreat. You're right. Let's go to war. Like, I'm following you wherever you go. And so now I'm stuck going wherever she goes. I don't know where it is, but that's where we're going. That's what we're gonna do. We're going to war. I
forgot about King Arthur.
Oh man, I never forget about that movie.
It was a long time ago. I remember seeing that movie and thinking, this is one of the coolest movies ever. But it was before I had actually seen like classics and artsy movies.
Right, how old were you when that movie came out? Like 6?
Wasn't it early 2000s?
It's totally early 2000s. I just also think that you're 12 right now, so.
You know, I
keep thinking you're in your 20s.
I got carded today at the Wawa when I got the wine.
Congratulations, dude.
And I was like, oh, is it because I look 21? He's like, no, it's just because you won't look me in the eyes. You look so suspicious. I was like, that's fair. That's fair.
Fair enough, my dude. Up next, we have Bulls of Beacon Hill #4 from Aftershock Comics. This is the story of a guy who is about to run for political office. It is the eve of his announcement that he is running, and his father, who is the head of mob crime in the story, the world of the story, does not want him to run for office because he doesn't want the world to know that he has a son who is a homosexual, and he's worried that that'll come out if he runs for office. So he sends his own hitman after his son, and the son is like not even going by the dad's name. He's not connected to it. He does not want anybody to know he's connected to his dad. But he's like, well, if he's going to send out these people after me, I guess I have to deal with this. And so this is him kind of in his own Punisher-esque style way going back after his dad, who's like the mob leader. And he's like, I don't care if I make my announcement or not tomorrow anymore. I just need to get to the point where my dad doesn't think he can control my life. Like, even after not being connected to my dad for like 15 years, he still gets to decide whether or not I do what I want to do with my life. I'm over this. He has created this. He wants a violent son. He wants a son who's going to like be like him. He's about to get it. And so this has been like all out war. And issue 5 is probably going to be the last one. Generally speaking, Aftershock books end on 5 issues. So I think we're going to see that big battle between the two. And we're going to see father versus son and who comes out on top. So.
What an interesting choice for a story.
It's Steve Orlando, and I love that he takes like kind of what's going on as the theme of like all of the books at the moment, and then puts them into that real world conversation of just like parents and accepting their kids for different reasons. I love that. Steve's very good at that, of like, let's have that conversation about how somebody is marginalized and somebody else in their life doesn't respect that. But let's do it in the storytelling that everybody else is doing right now, so you can see that that's just a part of life.
Yeah.
And he like normalizes that into the storytelling by doing that. And I think that Steve Orlando is probably one of the best people to like right now at using every different genre of literature to talk about people being marginalized in different ways. He's killing it with that. So, up next we have The Ambassadors, issue 3 from Image Comics, and Mark Millar, who should just have his own imprint because we're kind of just leading towards this one thing and nothing connects to anything else, and it's just kind of a Mark Millar universe at this point. This is the story of a woman who figures out how to create superpowers with her husband, and she's put in jail, and from prison she announces that she's going to give people from different countries of the world superpowers in order to create a superhero league that can protect the world. And she kind of puts a petition out for everybody to send her their petition, like their plea to be a superhero. And then, of course, she doesn't pick any of the people who want to be it, because if you want the powers, you're obviously going to use them for the wrong reasons. This particular issue, though, I almost cried. This is the story of a mother who really, really wants her son to love her, and she feels like she's losing him, and she feels like he's depressed, and she's like, I see like even like he has these letters and a gun and different things, and I feel like my son's gonna make the wrong choice for himself or maybe lots of people, and I want to do something like to protect my son, and I want him to be able to trust me. So if you could give me the superpowers, maybe I could teach my son to be a good person, but like maybe you could also like give us both superpowers and we could be a superhero team and I could help him become a better person. And the whole thing is this mom trying to like essentially just save her son from the world and himself. And then at the end you get a letter back as to why the woman actually chose her. Which is one of the few people that we've actually gotten to see like the, hey, I chose you for this reason. And she actually has I know you think it's because of the letter you sent me and what you wanted for your son, but I actually want to tell you the real reason. And the real reason is like 3 pages of this comic of just this letter from this woman about the real reason she chose her. And I swear to you, I cried. Like, wow. I was like that. Mark Millar has never emotionally got me in a story. It's always like action and like fun. And like there's like little, like there is emotion in it. And there's always like something like I'm like, oh, I like that character had emotion. But this is the first time I've ever been like, I was reading this Mark Millar story and I cried. Like, it happened. Today's the day. Where I was like, that was what that story needed, and I didn't even realize that it needed that until I read it, and now I just I don't even care if Matt reads the rest of this book. I just want him to read this one issue because I want him to have that story, to conversation with me. It's one of those where I'm like, we need to have a conversation, so I need you to read this issue.
Yeah, I really like the first issue, and I mean, I've enjoyed everything that he's done in this new little universe that he's created. So, yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
It's surprising to me in 2023 that he's a writer that I'm, excited to see books come out from.
It's not a thing I expected to be. Yeah.
Weird.
Up next we have the... speaking of stories that I want Matt to read, I actually sent a story out of this book to Matt when this was still just a galley, a preview issue the second one, which we're going to talk specifically about in a second. But this is issue 420 of P.P. Poo Poo from Silver Sprocket. And this is a Chicago cartoonist who does this book basically about life in Chicago and their personal experiences going to art school. I think last issue of this, we talked specifically about the art school issue, but I saw this issue at the Comics Pro Retailer Summit, and I literally asked the owner of Silver Sprocket, I was like, do you mind if I just literally Snapchat this entire vignette to my husband from Chicago, because it is literally a man. This literally describes Matt so perfectly. And he even is dressed like Matt, and so it was funny to me, but this is the story of a guy who, that particular one was the story of a guy who lives in Chicago, and he is angry about a lot of things, like most people in Chicago. Did you send it to Anthony? Did I send it to you? I'll have to send it to you. Anyway, or show it to you right here. But anyway, and then we go through some other great stories. This is anything that you could imagine about, again, being an art school student in a big city. You're going to kind of get a lot of the stories from that. You read this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love these because it kind of covers the crust punk art scene, music scene. There's a great little vignette in here about doing your taxes.
Oh my God, yes.
And it is the most absurd thing, but it's how I feel about doing taxes. So yeah, I like a lot of it. The So Punk guy is really funny. It's really entertaining. And I've never even been to Chicago, but I realize that I don't want to meet the people from Chicago when I go to Chicago. If I can just maybe walk around all of the locals, because I imagine a lot of them are like this. But yeah, it's a ton of fun.
It's so great. You would actually probably love so many of them because you would have a lot of these ridiculous conversations in it, and you would probably love talking about music with people from Chicago. So yeah, check it out. Pee Pee Poo Poo. Even if you're not, you can love it even if you don't know anybody from Chicago. All right, we got a lot of books that ended this week. And at least most of them I can actually show you the inside of.
Most of them.
So up first, we've got the ending to Where Monsters Lie, at least for Volume 1. This is issue 4 from Dark Horse Comics. This is the story of where do serial killers, from your favorite horror movies, where do all your horror movie killers live when they're not in the horror world. And they live in this nice little subdivision with an HOA run by a little old lady and a bunch of movie villains. And in the very first issue, one of the guys decides that he's going to bring home a bunch of teenagers to basically go through his Saw style puzzle. And one of them ends up getting out, and he goes to the police. And so the entire rest of the series has been the police battling all of these serial killers in the most ridiculous nonstop battle ever. This is also Kyle Starks, so it's fantastic and wonderful. And of course, it's got Vladimir on art, who came in and signed a set for us a couple weeks ago. Just happened to be in town and stopped in and hung out for a while.
That's cool.
It was super cool. We got to talk to Vlad for a while, and he told us all about all the different things. He actually did some of the coloring on the last podcast for the Left's books. And Dark Interlude, been around for coloring for a long time, but talked about how much fun this book was to work on. And we were like, oh my God, we love this book so much. It's so great. So yeah, I love this book. I hope we get more. I hope that this is the end of the first arc and not the end of the whole series. It's one of those where it's it could stop there, But, like,
Yeah.
I personally don't think it needs to stop there, so please give me more.
The guy with the teddy bear on his head is one of my favorite comic book characters.
It's your Halloween costume in the making.
Yeah. I'd say his name, but I can't.
Mm-mm. No, you can't. Also ending this week is Plush with issue 6 from Image Comics. This is the story of a guy who kind of hates his fiancée because she's cheating on him and wants out of the relationship. So his best friend's like, hey, why don't you take your mind off of it and let's go to this furry convention. And goes to a furry convention and is like, this is too weird for me. I need a moment. Goes outside in the alley and finds out that a bunch of furries are actually cannibals and ends up getting arrested and going on a wild adventure because he is saved by the cannibalistic furries. And now this is him trying to save and protect the cannibalistic furries from the police as they come for them. If you read Plastic or Vinyl, you'll know that this is just going to be a heartfelt story that has the weirdest premise ever. And you should definitely read it because it is just a heartfelt story in the end.
Yeah, they're a creative team that I trust and get excited for because Plastic flew under my radar, and then when I eventually got around to reading it and then Vinyl started coming out, I was like, oh, these are all just like very bizarre, off the wall, really great stories where you're like, this is an absurd concept, but it's got depth.
It's got so much depth. And also, we never find out what happened to the friend. Like, he kind of, like, gets abandoned at the con, and I'm like, I want a side story, like a one-shot of, like, the friend just going through every section of the convention, like, where'd he go? Have you seen my friend? Because if you've ever been to a convention with a friend, and y'all are both in costume, and the one friend gets, like, pulled in one direction, and you get pulled in the other because people are, like, taking pictures or whatever, the trying to find your friend for the rest of the time at that convention in and of itself is a comic book adventure waiting to happen. Like, so I would just like that spinoff. You can't open this book at all.
Okay.
But Lovesick, issue 6, I believe. 7. Issue 7 from Image Comics. This is the end of this book. This is not for children. This is probably not even for teenagers. This is 100% a very, very, very mature book. It starts out, the premise of this book is that a girl runs a Red Room style experience, and she, it's an experience. She's like bringing people in that want to be a part of it. Like, she's like letting people like pick to be a part of it from the internet. So she does that. She's kind of a dominatrix, but also, like, then she kills you at the end. And the reason why she does the killing is because she personally is in love with a guy who's a cannibal. And that's how she ended up in this world, is because she wanted to, like, her fetish was she thought she wanted to be, like, eaten by cannibals. And now she's kind of built out who she is. And, like, no matter what, like, in all the relationships she's had with, like, the different people, like, we see the whole backstory of how she gets there. And then we see where she ends up in this issue. And we kind of see her grow and her growth through it. But, again, if you're squeamish, you're not going to like it. If you're offended by extreme violence, you're not going to like it. If you're offended by extreme sex content, you're not going to like it. This is all of those things. This is a NC-17 level almost book for sure. But if you are somebody who like read some, like is interested in some of those like torture style things, and you're like, but I wish somebody actually made one where somebody realized that there was like a heart, like it grew a heart through it, and like the story was about somebody who went in thinking they wanted that and then came out on the other side. That's actually what this story ended up being. Like, you actually follow, like, a young girl who entered into that world, and over the course of the world, like, the course of her life becomes, like, almost the queen of that world, and realizes that she'd rather, like, save people out of it than be into it, almost. Not where I thought that story was going at all when I started reading it. And honestly, when I read issue 1, I was like, I remember Matt saying, like, this is kind of Red Roomish, so you probably won't like it. And I read issue 1, and I was like, I don't know, because she was going after incels only.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of intrigued. Like, where's this going? And then as it's gone on, I'm like, oh, she's actually, like, developing, like, she's developing as a character, and I got like more and more invested. And a couple of girls also started reading it at the store, and we've all kind of had conversations like about her, like, oh, it's like she's kind of like in it, and then she's kind of like coming out of it, and like where is she falling in this? And so it's kind of been an interesting thing, because a lot of these books that are Red Room focused, and a lot of stories in general that are Red Room focused, oftentimes like the purpose is to kind of like step on women, almost literally, but also like they use women as the object in a lot of those stories. And so this one was kind of a flip of that, and like let this woman both figure out, like, be the one who could be the strong one in that world, but also figure out that like that motherly, caring, nurturing person could also come back to like still grow through her and kind of come out. So it was an interesting story, for sure. But again, if any of those things bother you, like, this entirely is trigger warning story, for sure, which is why we're not showing you the inside. Also because Facebook will take this video down.
I gotta say, just looking through this last issue, I know I fell behind, but that is some wild and crazy nonsense. I definitely want to go back and catch up, because what I just saw, I never thought I would see in a comic book.
No, and like from Image. Like, also, like, that's the other thing. Image. Like,
this
it's
should
not.
Be polybag.
It
to be
should
honest.
be. It should be.
Wow.
It should be.
I'm on issue 5, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Wait till you get here.
I'm surprised that it's.
And then tell me.
I'm surprised that
I've
it's
already
not.
seen some insane things in it.
I'm honestly surprised that it does not get polybagged. And that Image put it out. Like, again, surprises me. And then there's no, like.
Cannibal dinner parties.
Gosh.
Cannibal sex dinner parties.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
excited
crazy.
for that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's, again, not for young people at all. Not for some adults either, and that's totally okay. I can't go to that next, so we're gonna stick, because I was like, I cannot go to like the young adult book after that. We're gonna stick.
No,
we're gonna step down. No, we're gonna step down. So this one also started with a Red Room style concept, so we're gonna step down from there. This is Trojan issue 4 of 4. This is from AWA. This is the story of, we've got fairy creatures, magical creatures in this world, and they are all being kind of used off in things like red rooms, and kind of just segregated, and different terrible things are happening to them. And this is the story of one young girl who is determined to find the red room that is essentially sacrificing fairies and things like that, and get into there. And she has told everybody leading up to this point that she wants it to be so that she can be sacrificed, and she's come up with this great story about why. And we find out in issue 2 that is not really the case. She is a Trojan horse coming in to here, trying to get in so that she can attack them from the inside. And in this issue, we do actually get to see that happen. And I don't want you to go too far, because
I know.
you reveal a lot in
I was
this.
going to cut it off, because the back half of this issue, the way this ends is super cool.
Yeah. Did you guys read it?
I did, yes. Yeah, this was one that, I don't really read a ton of AWA stuff. I think it's just because I missed a lot of the initial run when it came out. And it was also a lot of that, what was it, Resistance that did
the Resistance Universe
pandemic kind of stuff. So I didn't really read too much of it. But lately they've been putting out a ton of great books. And this one, I was like, okay, well, I just want to know what the Trojan Horse is. I want to know how it's done. And this was awesome.
I know.
This last issue, I was like, whoa, this is cool. This is super cool.
And that, I mean, we talked about earlier, like, oh, there's just certain people, like, I know I'll trust. Daniel Kraus could put his name on a cereal box, and I would probably be like, this is the best written cereal box of all time. Like, I love his writing so much. He wrote the autumnal, so if you know Matt and I, you know that we will swear by that book being one of the best.
Yeah.
But he is the guy who translates adapts Guillermo del Toro's movies into novel. He did George Romero's. He finished out the zombie universe for him. He did Year Zero. Seriously, Daniel Kraus, like, you could give him whatever book you want. You could give him whatever book I'm like, will never read that. You could put Daniel Kraus on it, and I would swear to you that was the greatest book on the shelf. Like, does not matter. I think he is one of the best storytellers out there right now. And I absolutely think that we should just give him all of the books all the time.
I agree.
And again, this one. And even Axel Alonso and I had a conversation about this, and that is definitely me name-dropping the fact that I had a conversation. Axel Alonso, who, of course, was with Marvel, created trade paperbacks in the comic industry, started as one of the founders of AWA, and his editor. And I told him, I was like, when Trojan, I was like, first of all, congratulations on bringing Daniel to AWA. I think that's great. And I was like, but Trojan, the start for that. And he was like, oh my God, when Daniel came to me and was like, oh, I'm going to do this Red Room book. And I was like, that's not really a thing we want to do at AWA. It's not really, you got to have a good reason. We're more real world, effect of the thing. So what's your reason for it? He goes, and then he told me, well, this is what I'm going to do with the story. And he goes, I don't want to spoil it for you. But when he told me how it was going to end, I was like, sign the deal. And now that I've read the end, I'm like, okay, of course you did. Of course you signed the deal.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why also did you doubt the man? So come on. So he's fantastic. Our last ending this week is from Battle Quest Comics. It's Trident of Aurelia, issue 4. Everybody always tells me we don't have enough mermaid stuff in the world. Battle Quest gave you a very beautiful mermaid story in this book, and it is young adult, teen plus, I guess I would say, but it's very young adult. It's all about a teen girl whose father is one of the senators essentially for this world that has this island nation that's been separated from the rest of the world by a Red Sea, and they can't get through it. She doesn't know who her mother is or what happened to her. Her father has now since been killed, and her problem is that she just wants to read books to find out the real history of the world, and nobody wants her to do that. So she gets arrested. They are going to throw her into the Red Sea as a sacrifice because how dare she read books? And then she gets sacrificed to the Red Sea, and it comes to find out mermaids live in the sea, and she is actually the daughter of the queen, who has passed on, and so now she is the new queen of the mermaids, and she is working to save the world, both on land and by sea, as the new queen mermaid. And this could have been an ongoing, could have been a 20-issue book. I know Battle Quest, this is only their second book, so they're in that small 4 to 6 thing. But Battle Quest, you're ready for ongoings. Dear God, Nomad was so good. And the art was incredible. I mean, I gave Gary Barker bought copies of Nomad to use in his classroom at Ringling. He was like, wow, these panels, I'm going to go show them. Battle Quest, you are there. Your first book was bought by the illustration professor of Ringling to, talk about in his class. You don't need to worry about doing miniseries. You're good. Let's go for it. I'm ready for some ongoings because stories like this are sitting there at Battle Quest. They're fantastic, and we need to see some more love for this publisher. They've got their third book is about to start later this month because they're kind of in that we're going to publish one at a time stage. Because again, we're on book 2 from the publisher total. But this is definitely a publisher. I cannot wait to see where they are in 5 years from now. I hope that we're just oh, we got another Battle Quest comic. I hope we get to that point because everything they've put out has been so good so far. All right, we got a lot of number 1s. We're going to talk about really fast, and then we're going to get some picks of the week. So, this is not a number 1. I put that in the wrong spot. We're going to talk about that later just because I put it in the wrong spot, apparently, and I guess we could do it before let's do it really fast before we get to number 1. Black Tape from AWA. This is issue 3. It was in the wrong spot. It was buried in my number 1s. I'm so sorry to confuse you, internet. I'm also confused, apparently. Are you caught up on this?
I am, yes.
Oh my God, go for it.
So this is the story of a rock star who dies, and the wife he leaves behind is checking out. Oh man, this is one I can't show everything. Oh no, it's just that little part. And you find out his wife discovers that there is a secret passage that leads to a chamber down beneath the house, and some missing girls are connected to it. Some dark culty stuff was going on, and so in the last issue she brought her friend in to be like, hey, let's try and get to the bottom of this. Let's do some detective work and figure it out. And in this issue, she is starting to not only really see the full picture, but now the walls are starting to close in. We do only have one more issue after this, so this is pretty much all right, are you ready for that last act? Because this is it. We're about to see how this all comes to an end. And I'm very excited for it. I really like a lot of these characters that they bring in. There's a lot of creepiness in this book where I'm like, okay, if I saw you out in public, I would be nervous being around you, especially this guy here who's just like hanging out in the woods with wolves. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this. I've always liked the kind of ties to heavy metal, rock and roll, and like the occult and stuff like that. So yeah, I've enjoyed this so far. I'm excited to see how it all comes to an end.
And I love Dalibor on art with Dan Panosian writing. That was a great team up. AWA loves to use Dalibor as an artist. And again, Dan Panosian, that's another Dan Panosian, like bringing him in was such another great win to me for AWA as a publishing thing, as a publishing house, because I think getting some books from him in their system is going to be so good because Dan's another great writer.
Yeah.
But yeah, having Dalibor as one of your like in-house artists, it's great. All right, now we're going to talk about number ones. Haha! We'll probably have another one mixed in there that I'm going to be like, dang it, I thought I was so good. I'm going to toss this your way because I know you were so excited when we found out that there was going to be more Grim Space. Yes. So this is Grim Space Pinocchio. These are one-shots from Scouts.
P1 Nokia.
P1 Nokia. And we read Grim Space, and we were like, is this an anthology? Yeah. We are so stoked, and I know you were, so tell them what's going on.
Yeah, so that first issue, it's basically, grim fairy tale stories in space, and the first one was Jack and the Beanstalk, and I just kind of liked how they do a really good job of condensing these stories down to the bare minimum, but hitting all the parts that you need, and then giving you the overall gist. So, I mean, it's Pinocchio, but instead of him being a wooden boy, he's a robotic boy, and he wants to be a real boy so he can be fully and truly the sun. You know, that's his whole purpose. And there's an alien woman there who's like looking for robots that she can put in her shows, and she says, "I make all the dreams come true." And so of course P1 Nokia is like, "Well, I gotta go with her." And that's not really how it plays out. I also like that they do touch on the giant whale portion of the story, because I wasn't sure how they were going to do that. And I think they did it
so well.
They did it really well. I didn't even guess that. But yeah, I think it's a fun way to kind of tell the grim stories, which we have seen a good handful of time in comic books before, but this is kind of a fun, enjoyable way.
Do we know what's next? Did it give us a clue?
It didn't at the end, last time. Last time, the Pinocchio character was...
We saw Geppetto, right?
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. We saw Geppetto. And I even because we do get, Jiminy Cricket in here as well, so... they didn't tease the next one, but I'm so excited for it because this one was just as good.
Yeah, whatever it is, I'm in.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have Star Signs issue 1 from Image Comics, and I'm going to be excited about this because it's all based in the zodiac signs. But this is also in my line 5 this week. So this is the story of the stars are gone. One day, the constellations just completely disappear, which means all the stars in the sky disappear. And we start out by seeing a group of people who are almost like a militant soldier group that are there when it happens. And then we fast forward to a time when the stars have already been gone for a few months, and we meet our actual main character. And she's kind of like the 20-somethings, live on my couch, work in a coffee shop kind of chill girl. And her roommate, he's doing interviews of people I just want to I want to have this documentation of the fact how people are responding who knew that stars existed, because there's going to come a time where people didn't even know that stars existed. And I want to make sure we have all of this information recorded. And she's kind of okay, that's stupid, but yeah, you can interview me and ask me questions. And as it goes through the thing, suddenly she discovers that she has this weird power to freeze time. She doesn't know where it came from, and she is able to eventually kind of register it and then use it on command. She kind of figures out how to use it on command. And as she's figuring that out, and she's proud of herself for actually getting it together, we figure out that this is going to be some kind of book where there may be a war, there may be a something else. Maybe we're battling some kind of ultimate evil. Maybe this is a little bit of like a mystery or a horror of the sky falling. We don't know, but it looks like all of the constellations related to the zodiac signs may have landed up in people, and they may all now have powers. So we're going to figure that out as we get into issue 2, because we don't really know by the end of issue 1 what the whole point of this story is going to be. Yeah. We just kind of know that there's some players in the game.
It's an interesting concept, and I liked the 2-page spread of them kind of showing the constellations being destroyed. Yeah, I thought this was a very intriguing first issue. And I'm somebody who doesn't know much about zodiac signs and stuff like that, so I'll be interested to see if this is what finally ropes me in.
Yeah, and for me, I was like, that makes sense. I get that.
Yeah.
That's logical. That checks out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I thought this was a really good first issue. Great art.
And I really like the Aurora Borealis and the bright colors that are like from that Northern Lights kind of thing. And so I love that they kind of worked that into the coloration of this book. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have The Mighty Barbarians issue 1 from Ablaze Comics. So tell them what this is.
Yes. So there is an evil force that has the ability to travel between different worlds. And so in the very beginning, you see them in like a barbarian world. And then the second one, it cuts to King Arthur's world. And you see Lancelot and Morgan Le Fay's there. And of course, Morgan Le Fay's like, hey, I figured out how these creatures are able to jump between worlds. I have that power, so the only way to stop this evil force is to go to all these different worlds and find these awesome warriors and bring them together in like a super team of different warriors. So you have like the Native American and like the tribal warriors. You have this like awesome lady with a shield who just wants to drink alcohol and is like, oh, this is how war is. But yeah, I mean, it's basically, all right, let me get this team together and we're going to face this like world-ending evil force together. And then of course at the end, if you're like, okay, well now that the team's together, are they just going to go battle? And they're like, oh no, there's this myth about these orbs and you got to go find the orbs. So what we're going to see is this team of kind of misfit warriors all coming together and trying to hunt down these orbs. It's an interesting concept for a book, and I'm sort of here for it, but I think what is more intriguing to me is the team dynamic and the different characters that they've brought in. And
Ablaze doesn't have the rights to Conan, but they do all the Sumerian stories.
Okay.
And so they have like Belut and all the like secondary characters within like the Conan world. They have like the names on those, but then like the Conan story itself is just like the Sumerian. And so it's interesting to me because I was like, oh, this kind of
character is supposed to essentially be Conan.
I think they're kind of bringing in like they know that they have a Conan fan group like for their comics, so I feel like they kind of brought some of that into it.
Okay.
But this is kind of like if you're not, it's kind of like how you can, indie comics are great when they come up with superheroes because you can find like your non-canonized superheroes. This almost feels like your non-canonized like barbarian story. And it's done by the guy that does it's done by the same guy that does Barbaric.
Oh, yeah,
Michael
I was like,
Morrissey.
that name does look familiar.
So, if you are looking for some of that like ragtag but like less adult almost version of it, then this is a good
and a little bit more serious.
Yeah, a serious. Everything's more serious than Barbarian.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
He must really just love barbarians.
I think he's really hoping that somebody's going to give him Conan. I really just think that's what he's going for, and like they should at this point because he's doing a great job writing in this one.
He's definitely putting together the right portfolio for it for sure.
Up next, we have Silence, issue 1 from our good buddies at Literati Press. I was super stoked to see this. They actually tweeted that they had this book coming out last week, and then we never got our diamond shipment. And I was like, no, it's not actually at Bad City. I'm so sad. But here it is. It's here now, so I'm excited. This is a story of a young girl who feels kind of smothered by her dad, who just really loves her. Like, he plays songs for her every night of her life, like, on his guitar, like, comes in and, like, sings her a lullaby. And she just kind of feels smothered by this and, like, not having her mom anymore. So she's like, I'm going to go off and leave this small town, and I'm going to go do my own thing. And while she's out doing her own thing, she gets a form letter, the worst form letter ever, that says, "Dear Sir or Ma'am, it has come to our attention that your loved one," and it's like all in like the like fill in the blank, "has been lost at sea, potentially. We're sorry for your loss." Like, and it's just not even filled out form letter. And so she goes back home and is like, this can't be right because there's no information on here, but my dad does work on a boat, because the only things to do in this town are either be a musician or work on a boat. And she chose music, and her dad chose kind of both, but he got lost at sea. So now she's back, and she's determined to figure out what happened to her dad. And they've kind of find out that all of these parents, all these people who work on the boats, are getting lost in essentially the Bermuda Triangle. And there's possibly like some sirens out in this Bermuda Triangle that are bringing these boats down. So she ends up with her childhood best friend recruiting this really like crass old musician woman who has a submarine to go out on an adventure to try to find her dad and all of the people who are getting lost at sea. And of course they need one more person because they need somebody to fund it. So the daughter of the richest woman in town steals the money from her mom and is determined to kind of like take her mom down and also like stick it to the man at the same time and get out of the town. And so this ragtag team of musician women are on this submarine out trying to get past these sirens and figure out what is happening in this Bermuda Triangle and save the people. And it's just, it's going to be such a fun book. I'm so excited. I love all the little musical references. I love the characters. The best friend is great. She's kind of like, I'm not into any of this, but I just want to save my sister. And I just want to get out of this town, but I want to take my sister with me. And if this is what I have to do, like, I'm just tired of dealing with the man. And like, it's such a good story. Such a good premise, oversized issue. Literati, it's probably going to have a little bit of delay between issue 1 and issue 2, because they are a small press, they print in-house. So sometimes they are not an FOC. They're not a final order cutoff publisher, so you can only order like for 2 months out for them. They're on the initial order, so that's why I say there might be like a little bit of a time between issue 1 and issue 2. Sometimes they come out monthly still. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay because of that. I'm super stoked though. I think all of these characters are going to be cool, and Literati always ends up having like the most heart in their stories by the end, so I can't wait to see if they find the dad. I'm going to cry if they don't, but I also want to see how this turns out, because it could go in a million different directions right now. I don't know which one's going.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see where this goes, because it's very quirky. It like almost fringes on like Wes Anderson in the way that it's kind of presents itself, but not so stylized, but just kind of in the vibe of it.
The submarine lady is definitely a Wes Anderson character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, the moment I saw the submarine, I only thought of one song this entire issue, which is Yellow Submarine.
I was like, the Yellow Submarine.
And I was like, that was just playing in my head the whole time. But honestly, I'd say this was probably my favorite book out of everything that I read this week.
What? I would have put it in the picks of the week. Dang it.
Yeah, well, the thing is I didn't have a pick of the week this week, more so as a me problem than a comic book issue. But yeah, I think out of all of them, this was the standout. But
this is Phil's pick of the week. I should have put it over there. I almost put it over there anyway without asking you, and now I'm mad that I didn't. Dang it.
Yeah, I was, because at first I was pleasantly surprised, because I like, there's the one Literati Press book I like, Blackjack Demon.
Yes.
And there was the futuristic one that was really confusing to me.
I love that book.
You promised me
Utopia.
Yeah. And I love the art in the books, but
I don't know what it is about their books. I think the stories, because with comics, I enjoy laughing more. Like Everything Sucks, which Anthony was just reading, is like I lean more towards those like silly books, and so sometimes I stray away from like the very like I already cry enough, and I don't want to cry when I'm also reading comics. So sometimes I kind of avoid those. And I even when I finished this one, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to continue this. Just because I believe I'm going to cry.
You're gonna. I feel like we're gonna cry, but you're gonna suffer. But you're gonna be happy about it.
Am I?
Yes.
Do we know that?
No.
So maybe I'll let you read it first.
I always do, and I'll tell you if you can't read it.
You're crying.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Usually that's what happens when I give you the books. Anyway, I'm like, this one made me cry. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And so you'll know. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'll warn you next time. Okay. So he only didn't make it his pick of the week because he's scared he might cry. But otherwise, it would have been Phil's pick of the week.
It would have been my pick of the week.
Preemptively thought he was going to cry.
Yeah.
So in issue 3, when Phil cries, it will no longer be that pick. Issue 1 was his pick of the week.
Yeah. I mean, it is essentially my pick of the week.
Give it back to me. I'm going to hold it up again in 5 minutes.
It's too late.
It's Phil's pick of the week.
I'm going to add it in the
Thank you.
thing after.
Please.
You don't have to.
Well, he's gonna. Next, we have World Tree issue 1 from Image Comics. This is the newest James Tynion.
Yes.
Tell them what it's about, Phil.
I remember when I don't know if it was initial order or FOC, but there was a lot of hype around this book. I think a lot of it probably has to do with it being James Tynion.
Well, there's also hype about it about 3 weeks ago because they misprinted the cover A and they pulled it all. And now
really?
Everybody's trying to get their hands on the damaged ones to sell. So the damaged ones go for like $20 on the internet.
Like the cover's damaged?
The cover was printed too dark, so you can't see down here that there's this dead body. You can't see any, like this is all, like this is darker than the blanket is. And so you can't, it's like almost a black background. You can't see that there was like clues for the story in there. So they just like recalled the whole thing.
Okay.
And they delayed the release of the book by like 2 weeks.
Did not know that.
Yeah,
because I was wondering. I was like, "Wow, okay, is this like this? There's a lot of hype around this book."
That's fine.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Anyway, this is World Tree, and it is. So you have the internet. Now, there's also this thing called the Undernet, which is essentially another name for the dark web, but it was created by these people, and it potentially had. There's something there with it. That I'm not quite sure what it is. Like, is it a mind control thing? Is it some type of a weird fight? I don't know the specifics, but essentially what we have is this young boy with a GoPro attached to himself decides one day to film himself going around and murdering all of his neighbors in his neighborhood, and he shows them this thing on the internet and for like a brief moment, and it like throws them off, and then he kills them, which is it's wild. But then it cuts to this guy and girl who are driving in a car, and they're going to see the guy's younger brother. They work for a podcast company, which I feel like is a job we commonly see in comics now. Like there's a lot of, now they're starting to really put the whole podcast and comic books together, which I'm here for, as a podcaster myself, so it makes sense. But they are traveling to see his little brother, and they soon find out that his little brother is the kid that just murdered 60 people. So it goes from, oh, hey, I'm just really excited for you to meet my little brother, to, oh, wait a second, now we got to go get involved in this crazy thing. We also meet the people who created this program or part of the internet or something, and they're basically like, hey, we need to go and basically prevent something from spreading, and we've done this before and we got to do it again. There's a lot of questions.
There are more questions than answers in this book, which a first issue should have.
Yes, and I am very intrigued by this story. I can't go any further past this because there's a character in here who, for some reason, likes to take all of her clothes off before she kills people.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on.
So weird.
She's very strange.
Yeah, but she looks like Grimes.
Yeah,
a little bit. So it's
does.
almost like if Grimes was just like, I'm gonna go around and kill people. But yeah, by the time this issue ends, you're like, okay, I don't know where
Tynion is going with this necessarily, but I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah.
Because of, like, now, like, obviously since, I've been alive for the kind of how, when the internet really kind of took off, when it actually became the early iterations of what it is today. And so I'm always intrigued by different parts of the internet. I don't have the stomach to actually go on the dark web. Like, I never went down that path or tried to. But now this whole undernet, like, I'm curious of, like, what that entails. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it was a good first issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tynion, so
We knew that we would like it.
it's gonna be a good story.
It's like, it's gonna be great. Like, you sound so disappointed. Oh, of course it's good. Up next, we have Deep Cuts, issue 1. This is the New Orleans 1917 What It Means, and this is from Image Comics. And Kyle Higgins, and allegedly not a part of the Massive Verse, but I don't trust him at all.
If they find a way
to make
to
this
connect this to the rest of it, I will be blown away.
Somebody told me, they were like, why'd you put Deep Cuts in my box? And I go, because I no longer trust Kyle Higgins to write anything that's not connected to the Massive Verse, so I'm just going to assume that at some point he's going to be like, all music is a part of the Massive Verse. But this is essentially kind of this is going to be an anthology that goes through different time periods and talks about, like, people and music and things like that.
Oh, it's an anthology?
Mm-hmm. There is another one that's advertised at the back of the book. And this particular one is a story about a young boy who wants to be a jazz musician in the 1970s in New Orleans, and he plays he plays his instrument outside the windows of jazz clubs because he can't get into them. And eventually a guy notices him, like one of the best musicians in town notices him and is like, I'm gonna make you a star, kid, come play with me. And he gets him a job, and the kid's playing at a brothel with the guy, and he's like, at least I've got some, tip money coming in, like, I'm not getting paid, but I'm gonna do this. Ends up meeting some other musicians and kind of gets a hard lesson in how the music industry works and how you can't really trust anybody that you meet along the way, and that sometimes meeting your heroes isn't necessarily what you want to do. But he learns a lot about not only himself but his dad, who was a jazz musician. It's a great story. It's beautiful. This was definitely one of, like, the most requested books that I had this last week, honestly and truthfully. And I think it's so exciting to actually take a step away from the Massive Verse for Kyle Higgins and just let him use that storytelling for some real beautiful stories about people.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I mean, I tend to get drawn towards, like, music history.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like seeing the early days of different genres, and jazz was always one of those that I never took a deep dive into. And, like, reading this, I was like, I kind of want to start reading up more on jazz, because this was, like, the fact that the kid was a clarinet player. Like, I've never really thought about the clarinet in jazz, and
it's huge in jazz. And I was reading,
I
read
know
this,
that,
and I was
though.
like, oh, I got to give this to Matt. Like, this is a book that he'll love.
Because now I'm like, now I want to go and hunt down who, like, the big clarinet players were back in the day.
Oh yeah, I got the list for you, girl.
There you go.
That's the music that plays in Bat City.
Yeah, we play. That's our jazz playlist.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's a clarinet. Not a
Is
trumpet.
that really?
Yeah.
See, I always thought that was a trumpet.
Right.
They sound very similar.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Except the clarinet's reeds and a trumpet is
Yeah.
Brass.
brass.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. It's wild. When those guys wail on the clarinet, they wail.
Yeah, and that was
Go
the thing.
hard.
Like, when he was going off, I was like, I've never heard a clarinet go off. Like,
Apparently you have, and you just didn't even know it.
Jams, bro.
Yeah.
I'm all about the jams.
And it's very New Orleans style.
Right. So
Yeah.
the clarinet is definitely
Okay.
that New Orleans
Dixieland
jazz.
jazz.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
That's-
intrigued.
Matt and I love to sit around and listen to jazz. We listen to jazz when we eat breakfast in the mornings a lot of the time. Oh my gosh.
See, my dad was more of a blues guy, so I listened to more blues than I listened to jazz.
Yeah.
Like, when we went to New Orleans, we went to nothing but blues clubs, not jazz clubs. So
Yeah.
That's a deep dive I need to go down.
Oh man, enjoy. It's going to be fun. Up next, we've got Parting Ways, issue 1 from Scout Comics. This is a non-stop, so we're going to see this issue 1, and then we're going to jump to a trade paperback.
Which I am excited for with this one, because what I would have expected the whole story to be happens in this first issue, where I'm like, okay, where else are you going to go with this? Because you have a man and a woman who are meeting at a fountain to essentially say goodbye. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, so we know that this story is technically going to end with them parting ways. And so we start with that, and it flashes back to the first time they meet, and he's hanging out with his buddy in a bar, or at a coffee shop, and she's working at the coffee shop, and her friend who's hanging out with her working is like, oh, he's totally into you, but he's not coming over here, and you gotta wait for him to come over here. And then, of course, his buddy's like, dude, go over there, she's totally into you. And he's like, I don't know, maybe, possibly. Of course, they end up getting together, and it's kind of a rocky start to a relationship, because I think they're both really just, like, too, I don't want to say high-strung, but, like, they're very panicky about the relationship in general. She's like, I don't think he likes me. It's been 3 days. And he's like, I don't know where to take her on a date. Do I take her here? Should we just go to a movie? And so they're both trying really hard, because I think the point is to immediately be like, this is their perfect match. And set up like, hey, this is a couple that you want to stand early on. And then you find out that what eventually leads to them meeting at the fountain is that he has decided to he's enlisted as a medic in the military. She is not a fan of war, and is kind of like, whoa, what about us? You're just going to go off and just go ahead and put an end to what we are kind of building here? Which is also I'm a little kind of off put by it, because it's like, y'all just started dating.
You joined the military and you never told me. It's a story you'd only hear in comics, except we also have friends that was their story, and so I laughed so hard when I read this story.
Oh, really? Wow, okay. So you already know how this is going to end.
I mean, I guess so.
But yeah, so this issue, and then it ends with them going back to the fountain and them having that last conversation before he walks off. And at that point, I'm like, okay, well, what else is there to tell?
But we're getting a whole trade paperback, so who knows?
So I'll know how this ends a lot sooner, which is great, because I immediately am like, okay, is he going to go off? Are we going to get kind of like a Gatsby where he comes back from the war and then they kind of have a thing, but she's with somebody else? Like, what?
I know, I was like, this would be so hard to read in single issues, because I feel like I'm already emotionally invested in these people so hard that I would be so, like, because you know that those issues would have ended with, like, did he die in the war, or did she end up with someone, did she say yes to somebody else, and you would be so mad for a whole month. So I'm so glad that it's just going nonstop, because like you said, I just want to read the whole thing at one point and be like, okay, good, or bad, I don't know, this could be terrible. I hope it's not. Please don't break my heart, Scout.
It makes me nervous.
I know.
It makes me nervous that they're setting up to break my heart.
It was so well done that I'm like, I'm gonna suffer, but I'm gonna be happy about it.
Yeah. Well, I saw the cover of them, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna love this.
I know. It was so good.
I'm a sucker for those romance stories.
Honestly, it's so good. You just get the nonstop trade when it comes up, because it's gonna be great. Up next, we have Usher of the Dead, The Evil Men Do, issue 1, because it's a one-shot, from Blood Moon Comics. I love that the tagline is horror done right. And I don't know if that's supposed to be their Usher of the Dead tagline now, or if that's Blood Moon's tagline, but either way, like, go on. You go ahead.
Is this series just now one-shots?
So this series is just now one-shots. It started out as, like, a full series, and the series actually got canceled. And they never finished it, and I like, threw a fit. I was like, I'm gonna, like, I don't know, I'm gonna cry about it in the corner for the rest of my life. I don't know, I was so upset. And then they started releasing one-shots, and I love what you're doing with these one-shots. Don't stop. This is fantastic. And And this one particularly, the Usher of the Dead is essentially the Grim Reaper. He is the master of death. And we saw in the little series that we got, the part of it, the series that we got, we saw that he kind of has his domain and he's kind of got all the people that he monitors. And now in these one-shots, we're seeing the way he approaches death in different places. And in this particular story, he's talking about how there's a lot of really bad people in this world, and they do bad things. And the problem with being essentially the Grim Reaper is that only thing he can do is collect the dead. He can't stop the deaths. And in this particular issue, he is he sees a serial killer, like a guy like collecting a woman off the street, and he knows he's going to essentially rape and kill this woman, and he can't do anything to stop it. But what he can do is not collect her soul so that she can haunt him for the rest of his life, however short that may be, because he goes insane. And so the Usher of the Dead basically gives her the option. And he's like, look, I can't stop you from being killed, but I can give you the power to ruin his existence after that, and empowers this woman to stop this man from ever doing it to anybody else. And I was like, go on, Usher of the Dead. You use those powers of death to do all the good in the world that you can. And he's like, it sucks that you can't stop it, but I'm going to find a way to make things right in the end. Seriously, this is one of Blood Moon's best things that they're doing, and they are doing some incredible work. But this is the one that when we read issue 1 of Usher of the Dead, we were like, you're going to be saying the name Blood Moon for a long time because of this. And still, just bring out all these one-shots for Usher of the Dead. If you've never read any of it, it doesn't matter. Pick it up. I sold so many copies this week of this one-shot because people were like, I don't know what this is, but this cover is phenomenal. Like, I want it. And then I told them what it was, and they were like, yes, double down. Bring me any Usher of the Dead. I haven't even read it yet, and I know I want more. So keep making Usher of the Dead because you're rocking it. Up next, we have Astrobots, issue 1 from Whatnot Publishing.
Yes, this is, Whatnot has been really ramping up their publishing, which I'm kind of intrigued by. I was on the app for a bit, and so when they moved over to publishing, I was like, okay, let's see how this plays out. Because I do, I know the people who started Whatnot, and I know they're comic fans, so it's always interesting to be like, okay, now you're a comic fan who now has your own publishing line. Let's see what you do with that. Because we sit around and criticize these publishing lines all the time and talk about how we think we could do better. But this is the story where basically humans have left Earth because it is uninhabitable, and they have left behind these robot factions to rebuild the Earth. And what we have is the focal point of this one is the city of Atlas, which is kind of, I think, where it's going to be the backdrop for this whole story. It's got this guy named Atlas who is basically like, I'm going to make sure that this city is ready and we're on schedule and everything's in order. And then all of a sudden this dude just shows up. He's been walking across the dead zone where robots shouldn't be. Everyone's like, whoa, what's this Apollo robot doing? They all should have shut down after they completed their directive. And he's like, whoa, I've got some stuff to tell y'all. Because what we see in this is there's other robot factions that are kind of rising up. They're sort of your group that is rebelling against the order that they are putting together. And so what you're essentially going to see is a battle between these two sides of robots that's going to slowly build and build and build. But also humans are slowly coming back down to Earth. So it's like, okay, where is everything going to end up when this dust settles and humans have returned? But I'm kind of excited for it. I really hope that we do see a little bit of the political aspects of it. But mainly I just want to see very much like a Transformers movie where there's a lot of robots just fighting robots.
Yeah, I think that's what you'll get.
And that's what I want, because they brought in this Apollo guy, and I'm like, this dude's cool.
I like
also,
his Deathstroke colored armor.
Yeah, they are putting out an action figure for that character, I believe. Yeah, they have an action figure that they're going to put out.
Is it exclusive to Whatnot?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I think. You may be able to order it, actually.
Let me see. Does it say?
Through Diamond.
It would probably, I would imagine, if it was me, I would make it exclusive to Whatnot, but that's just because, but I will.
I mean, it's on their website, so maybe.
Top Notch, Toy Notch, and Whatnot Publishing are partnering to release these high-end action figures, so maybe, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess.
I'm a little intrigued, though.
Yeah, interesting.
I bet
It's not
gonna be
surprising because
expensive.
toys and comics are the two biggest sellers on Whatnot, so it only makes sense that they would eventually make an action figure.
50 plus points of articulation.
50 points of articulation. That's nice.
It's going to be a ton of fun. I may have to try and see what the price on that thing's going to be. I bet it's expensive, though.
Up next, we have Chilling Adventures presents The Cult of That Wilkin Boy one-shot from Archie Horror. This is the story of Bingo Wilkin getting everything he ever wanted, which is to be a rock star. And much like we were talking about earlier, the rock music and the occult stories are always a lot of fun. And if you've ever read Archie Horror, you know that they definitely drop really far into the occult a lot of the times. And in this specific story, we see Bingo has sold his soul to a demon, possibly the devil, in an attempt to get to be a famous rock star. And now suddenly a new rock star has come out, and he's kind of more popular and more famous than Bingo. And Bingo starts looking at his contract and how long he's been a popular musician, and it's been 7 years, and that is the time he was guaranteed by the demon for his success. In 7 years they were supposed to come and collect his soul, and Bingo is kind of like, I'm not ready to go. And he realizes that the only thing scarier in this world than demons is crazy fangirls and your fandom. And how crazy, mad, rabid a fandom can get could possibly be the thing that beats even Satan himself. And so much like any other Chilling Adventure story, we get to see the underbelly of the rock industry and the occult battle in this. It's fantastic. It's an Archie Horror. I'm always in. They're both like cheesy, like almost like classic pulp, but have these great modern blends, and it's fun. It's exciting, and you should read it. The end.
I just want to say there's like 6 Cullen Bunn books out this week.
I know. Oh, Cullen Bunn is everywhere. That was one of them. Cullen Bunn had. We're
It's
talking
like
about
one of 4, I think.
We've got. Shoot, I don't even know anymore.
I know we've seen 3 of them.
2 or 3, right?
2 or 3, yeah.
At least, and there's one more. There's one more. But you know what? Because we had Door to Door. We had that one. We're going to talk about another one in a minute.
There was one more.
And there was one more, but I like all of them, so I'm not mad at it. So.
I mean, they're all issue 1s for the most part.
Door to Door is on issue 6 or 5. And it is still going well. So. We're doing good. We're doing good. Honestly,
can he stick the landing?
I don't know. But he does not have as many titles as he was like a year ago.
That's
and
true.
I think that's helped a lot. I think he like having, because we talked about this, when Cullen Bunn does like a focused time period, like he's only got a couple titles, he's one of the best at horror. But when he gets too many, he almost like loses sight of some of them. He feels like he's like on that like focus, like not as many right now. I think we're teetering on getting back to too many, but he's doing a lot of one-shots.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the Wilkin Boy, that's, like, one-shot.
Okay,
so,
then that's fine, yeah.
It's like when he because when he does the one-shots, he's really good. He, like, puts them out, and they're great. And I think he's got his main series. He's getting it to where they're lining up, like, where one goes on a break, and then he does the next one. So I think we're back to seeing Cullen Bunn, like, on a good schedule for Cullen Bunn to, like, be what he is, which is a good writer. So yeah. I think we're getting into a time where he's got a good flow. Don't overwhelm yourself, Cullen. Don't overwhelm Cullen, publishers.
I agree.
Yeah, because he's good, but you overwhelm him sometimes. You don't have to say yes all the time. Next up, we have Survival, issue 1 from Dark Horse.
Yes. If you thought, gee golly, I wish there was more vampire books on top of the 50 vampire books we've already had, here's another one just for you vampire lovers. I actually like the way this issue starts off because it has this kind of like blacked out pages and or blacked out panels, and it's like, there's a military base in Russia that's now being overtaken by a rebellious group. And now we find out that a nuclear reactor went off, and there's ash in the air, and this is like the worst thing since Chernobyl. But we saw planes fly out before it exploded, so we don't know what's going on because it's a straight media blackout. Russia doesn't want anyone to know what happens. And then we cut to Alaska. These two kids find a crashed Russian plane in the mountains of a small town, Alaska, and they run into this scary dude with the fingernails and the tattoos and the beard, and he's basically just murdering people on this plane. And then we cut to this young girl who is an ROTC student at a university somewhere else in Alaska. And her and her two friends are going to this small town to see her dad, who's like a really well-known military guy. And this small town is almost like where all like privatized military groups hang out. And they kind of have like their own version of Comic-Con. Or like a job fair where they all just like set up tents with their guns and try and convince other military guys to join their group. And so she shows up, and one of the kids who ran into the guy on the plane frantically rides her bike in and is like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe this." And the dude who she ran into on the plane is now got a sniper rifle and taking everyone out, and she grabs a gun and chases him into the woods, and everyone's like, "What are you doing? You know he's just trying to suck you in and bait you in." And she basically catches footage of them being vampires and like eating. The dude jumps like off of a huge cliff. They're eating body parts, and she's like, "We're not prepared for this." And at the end of this issue, it all breaks out. It's gonna get crazy.
It's gonna get crazy.
I personally am overwhelmed by the vampire stories that we've seen, but I also kind of want to see where this goes. I feel like if you're a fan of like 30 Days a Night, this could be more up your alley in terms of vampire stories. But it was enough to keep me like, I was like, okay, I'll at least give it the 3-issue rule.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was the first. Also, you know, tattooed Russian dudes are always cool, and if you're gonna make them vampires, it's even cooler.
I think we're actually like coming to most of the vampire series have hit their end, so this is like perfectly timed to like hit the like everybody else ended.
Is it?
Nightwalker is the only one I think that's still in the middle.
Jeff Lemire? What about
Little Monsters? Almost done.
Ah.
I think Little Monsters is about at its end.
Yeah, and I guess there's.
And Bloods and Teeth is over. And
yeah,
true. They're starting to come. A lot
Cult
of them are.
Dracula's done.
Cult of Dracula is done.
Like
Cover of Darkness is about
more.
to come back.
Okay.
Though. There's a new one shot coming up like in a week.
I feel like there's one or two more vampire stories out there.
We're starting to see. I think like I said, Nightwalkers is still going, but we're starting to see like them come to an end.
Yeah.
But I think we'll get a new wave. Honestly, I don't think
feel
they'll
like
ever
we
go
always
away.
do.
We
Yeah,
never go
there's
away.
always like a.
They are eternal. So
That's true.
what are you gonna do? Last new number 1 is Lamentation from Oni Press and Cullen Bunn. This one, actually, if you do buy a copy of this, I have a signed invitation to the Lamentation from Cullen Bunn. So Oni Press actually sent me invitations, and Cullen Bunn actually physically, he signed invitations for it. So I actually have some Cullen Bunn signed invitations, which are super cool.
But is it an invitation to actually something?
It's an invitation to Lamentation, like the theater performance of Lamentation.
Hey.
So it's super cool. So to tell you what this is the story of a young girl, and this was also in my Live 5 this week. It's the story of a young girl who wants to be an actress really bad, and she's kind of moved to the city, and she's like, I'm going to be an actress. She gets her first gig, and her mom, or she's on her way to audition for her first gig, and she's like, Mom, here it is. I'm so stoked. This is going to be great. And she goes to this audition, and turns out they just give her the role the second she walks in. They're like, you're on, you've got it. And she's like, I haven't even read yet. Don't you want me to read? And they're like, nope, you're good, you get it. And it come to find out is that everybody who is in this production can never leave the theater. They must perform this show and it must get like good reviews before they will be released from the theater. Their souls are now bound to it. And yet the play has never gone on because they all want to make sure that the reviews are good so they can be released. So like every 3 days, the costume person redoes all of the costumes. The set designers can't build a set. These people have been reading this play. They've changed out. Like, people have died trying to, like, they've gone crazy trying to get this show ready, and something has happened to them and they've died. There may or may not be a killer on the loose in the room. We don't really know. All we know is the show must go on, and yet it has not. I'm super intrigued to see where this goes. I have been in theater my whole life, and sometimes when you're in a production rehearsal, it feels like that. It feels like you're going to be in there forever and you're never going to be able to get out. And I'm super excited to see where this is going to go. You're taking a picture of the Reed Zeno. That is a book that I am super stoked for.
Well, one of my favorite artists, Shaky Kane, who doesn't really do a ton of work, is in the list that they have, so I'm very intrigued.
And Nick Cagnetti, who did Pink Lemonade, is also working on it.
Yeah, I saw that.
With Chris
Hester,
it's
a good lineup.
Reed Zeno is going to be great. It's a new book coming out from on Oni Press later on. It is their big book for this year that they're really pushing. But Lamentation, if you are a fan, I know a lot of people who are like, I like horror. I will pick up almost any horror book, but if it's a Cullen Bunn horror book, I'm definitely in. I feel like this is definitely going to be Cullen Bunn's big book this year, that we're focusing on, like, wow, this is Cullen Bunn back to, like, what he's good at. But I also think if you don't even know who Cullen Bunn is and you just like a good horror story, this is that classic, like, the theater is haunted kind of story that's going to pull you in. And gives you enough twists and turns. Like, you were like, because this is 48 pages. Also, this is 48 pages of comic book. This is an indie book, so it's not 48. It's not a 48-page book that's 16 pages of comic and the rest are all ads. This is actually 48 pages of story. And the whole time, you keep thinking, like, oh, this is a great breaking point for the end of the issue, and then it keeps going. And so, essentially, most comics are 22 pages. So, essentially, you're getting 2 issues of the comic in this one issue, and it definitely gives you as many twists and turns as you would probably get in 3. So, I'm curious to see where this is going to go for sure.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right. We're going to go to Picks of the Week. I'm also, again, the invitations are great. So if you buy a copy, let me know that you're getting a copy. If I'm not the one to check you out, if you already bought a copy and you want a Cullen Bunn signed invitation. And thank you to Oni Press. I was on the phone with Oni Press and they were like, dude, what do you want us to do? And I was like, make more Pink Lemonade. And they were like, wasn't that book great? And I was like, this is my pick of 2022. Like, let's talk about how great Pink Lemonade is. And they were like, what else can we do for you other than make more of a book that we have to talk to our artists to make more of? And I was like, I mean, what do you got? And they were like, we've got signed copies of this invitation from Cullen Bunn. Like, he signed some copies. Do you think people would want them? And I'm like, heck yeah, send them over. So thank you to our amazing Oni Press rep. And for Oni Press, like, just being all about, like, calling stores. Like, that was a phone call. They called and they were like, let's talk Oni Press. What do you like? And I was like, well, everybody likes Scott Pilgrim. So, duh. We all know Scott Pilgrim's great. Like, keep doing that. But here we are. Anyway, and I'm happy to see Oni Press. Like, you know, last year everybody was worried that Oni Press was going to shut down because they did the restructuring when they got bought by Lion Forge and everything. And I'm glad to see that they didn't and that they're bringing out so many great books this year. It's been 2022 and 2023 already have been some great books from Oni Press, and there's so much more on the slate that I'm super excited about, like Xeno. So it's going to be awesome. All right, Picks of the Week. We already know Phil's was Silence, #1 from Literati Press. I'm super excited to hear. I'm going to throw out some more for you. One being Love Everlasting, issue 7 from Image Comics. I will always love this book solely for the fact that the art looks like Darwin Cook's art, but also Tom King is writing a phenomenal story. This is the story of a woman. It is issue 7, if that's what you're looking for. This is the story of a woman who is basically living her life through romance novels. In volume 1, she keeps waking up in every issue, sometimes multiple times throughout the issue, in a different romance novel, different genre, and living that life. And once she falls in love with her person of her choice, I love this 2-page spread. When she falls in love with the person that she's supposed to be with in her mind, she ends up getting killed and waking up inside of a new romance novel. At the end of volume 1, she wakes up in a story called Too Hip for Love, and now in volume 2, she can't get out of that story. And all she's ever wanted was to be in love with someone and to have this perfect relationship. And now that she has it, she's tearing away at it constantly, and she's looking for it to be wrong. Everybody tells her it's perfect. She feels like it's perfect, and yet she knows that must mean that there's something wrong with it. And we did a book club on Love Everlasting issue 1, and we talked about how Tom King is one of the masters of what relationships look like, and having that psychoanalysis of relationships in comic books through different things, like superheroes with visions and Mr. Miracle, and people just connecting with each other and the different ways that they do that. And this book is absolutely 100% him talking about that, because the whole time it's like, oh, if I don't have the perfect love, then I'm just gonna die. And then she dies and she wakes up and she's like, maybe my perfect love should be this way. And then she dies and she's constantly trying to find what's right. And then she finds what is essentially right, and all she wants to do is figure out what's wrong with it. And there's more to it. There is that whole actual storyline that's running through where there is actually somebody that comes in and kills her, and there may be a connection to it being like her mom or somebody like forcing this to happen. But that's the like comic of it all, and Tom King is just like throwing in this whole analysis of everything, and again, this beautiful art. I love this book. If you didn't pick it up, grab a trade of issue 1. I think we have trades of issue 1. We just got some more in recently. If not, I will order more because I think everybody should read this book. It's so good. And again, as usual with Tom King, like as it gets closer and closer to issue 12 of the story, you're like, ooh, maybe this actually means this. This second arc, I'm finally starting to understand what the point of this story is going to be. Up next, we have issue 2 of The Neighbors from Boom Studios. The tagline of this book is "It's underneath us," and yet we have not talked about something being underneath us at all in this story yet, so I'm really curious about what's going to happen. This is our new slow-moving sense of dread classic horror story. In issue 1, we see a family that moves out of the big city because one of the parents, who is in the process of transitioning, feels really uncomfortable in the city, feels like everybody's staring at them as they are trying to figure out who they are, so they kind of become agoraphobic. So the family moves out to the middle of nowhere, and the neighbor lady is very strange, and weird things happen. And in the first issue, the teenage daughter runs out of the house in the middle of the night, and the parent, like one of the parents, goes out looking and is like, I can't find the daughter, and is panicking, comes back to the house, and the daughter is in the house like she's been there the whole time. And some strange things are happening. Issue 2 picks up with the daughter still being very strange, and the thing about this book that gets me is not the story, which is very, very good, but the way that facial expressions of the people who are related to the weird stuff that's going on are drawn is like, you know, when you watch a horror movie and like there's a person that you know is like possessed or that's a part of the weird stuff, and they make these faces and you're just like, I'm uncomfortable because of that person. This was drawn that way. And so when those people are in the panels or on the pages, you're uncomfortable. And you're like, I want to see if you can find, let me see if I can find one of the pictures. Oh my God, even like that smirk. But there is like, even just this, like this picture of this girl, like the way they draw this, like it's like skin curling. Like as you're reading it, you're like, I don't know what's happening still. Cause again, this is kind of like the autumnal where we talk about like, I don't really know what's happening, and it's slow moving, and I don't like, nothing really has happened yet. But I think something's happened, but they just give you these like creepy images where you're like, all right, I don't know what's going on, but I'm terrified. So read The Neighbors. Boom. Always good at everything that they put out, but this is definitely another one. And then we have issue 2 of Hairball from Dark Horse. And the 2 people in the room with me right now are the 2 people I'm going to try to sell this book to the most, and probably need to do zero work to do so, because this is a horror book in the style of Junji Ito that is about a cat. So I'm done. That's it. That's why it's the pick of the week. No, but this is the story of a young girl who is actually, the whole story takes place with her talking to her therapist. And she was an orphan girl who was adopted. And the parents that adopted her were very happy until the moment they adopted her. And now they hate each other. And the day that they bring her home, a stray cat is found at their house, and they also take the cat in. And she calls it Bestie, and Bestie and her, like, do everything together. Well, the parents start arguing all the time, and they blame the little girl for everything and, like, why they hate each other. So she, like, relies on Bestie to make her feel better about herself and everything. And she keeps telling Bestie that her family doesn't love her anymore. And Bestie starts making things happen. And some bad things happen to anybody that makes this little girl feel bad about herself. And in issue 2, she's now not so sure she trusts Bestie, and not so sure that she wants to keep Bestie around. But you don't get to make that decision for yourself. And it makes me want to hug my cat and be like, I love you, and don't ever doubt that, because please don't kill me in my sleep. This book is great. 100%. Like, every issue is going to be a pick of the week. Issue 1 was pick of the week. Issue 2 is pick of the week. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say issue 3 will probably be a pick of the week too. Because it's so good. And I think it's Matt Kent. Is it Matt Kent? Okay, so duh, of course it is. So fantastic. Read it. Wonderful. Buy it all. Phil missed issue 1, and now I feel like I'm just rubbing it in every time I talk about it.
Oh, it's fine. You know, I don't want to be reminded that cats can be devious.
But it's like, I don't feel like the cat is the villain, because we always talk about how, like, we need to stop making the cats the villain. I almost feel like the cat is the hero in the book, because it is going after people that, like, treat her wrong.
Yeah. And
it's like, oh, well, you did it to yourself. Speaking of cats that are heroes, Animal Castle is back. Volume 2, Issue 1 from Ablaze Comics. If you are a fan of Animal Farm, the George Orwell novel, and you have not picked up Animal Castle, I have a hardcover with your name on it for Volume 1. Or you can come pick up the Free Comic Book Day issue. It's confusing because it's this cover and it says Volume 2, but the Free Comic Book Day issue does actually have Issue 1 of Volume 1 in it with the preview of pages of Issue 2.
Was it necessary for you to say hardcover?
I did, because I wanted you to get one. I said I have a hardcover with your name on it, Phil. But also, Ablaze doesn't do a lot of hardcovers, so it was necessary to say that. This is a French comic with some of the best beautiful illustrations.
Yeah.
When I talk to people about comic books and they say, why do you think we should teach comic books? My thing now is that we've always used literature and art as the 2 pillars of education in society, and this is the example that I give in both capacities. This is if you read Animal Farm, you know that of course the pigs take over the farm. We kind of have a revolution against the humans. The pigs take over, and then the whole thing is the animals have this rebellion against the pigs because the pigs are terrible. This picks up with the cow, the bull, and the dogs are now in charge of the castle. Not a farm anymore, it's now a castle. And in Volume 1, we see Miss B, who is the last adult cat who has some kittens, who is like, we need to do something about this, but I don't know that I'm the person to necessarily do something about it, who also then ends up kind of leading this rebellion. And they realize that if you just go with the strong, like, let's use strength and let's fight, that you're going to end up back in a spot where you once again have the strongest people ruling society, and that's not the way to go. Like, by putting the strongest people in charge of the rebellion, they ended up oppressed again, and more so even than they were under the pigs. So now it's like, we need to do a peaceful protest. And now they've been doing this peaceful protest, and it hasn't won yet. So, but they don't want to become the bulls. They don't want to fall into the same capacity, and so they're trying to figure out where that line is. What is peaceful protest? What is a peaceful rebellion versus becoming, like, going too far and becoming the people that we don't want to be? And, like, how do we determine who will be in charge of the rebellion, and how do we make sure that person doesn't think that they get to take over society automatically? This is the one of the best written stories in comic books right now. It is so incredibly well done. This is one of those books where you do not try to pick it up and read it in your stack of books, like while you're flipping through everything, going through, and you're like, I'm going to read all my books in an hour this week. Read all of your books in an hour, and then read Animal Castle in a separate hour, because this is, it's classic literature in comic form. It's deep, it's meaningful, it's going to inspire you in 1,000 different ways, and you also are going to want to pour through that art and take your time on every word and think about it. Honestly, this is one of those books that if you can buy it in single issues, I strongly recommend that you do, only because you do need to think about each issue, because they are so heavy that like reading it in trade would be like trying to read all of Animal Farm the night before your test. You know, like we had, so I did that all the time in school, where it was like the night before, and I'm like, oh crap, I never read that book. Let me see how far I can get into it. And I understood like half of what I read, maybe, if I was lucky.
Yeah.
Don't do that to yourself. Take your time. Buy volume 1 of Animal Castle and read like each issue, like if it was still coming out like every few weeks or something, and like think about it and talk about it, and then buy issue 2 as like volume 2 issues as they're coming out, and just like fall in love with this story, and you know, start a revolution or something. I don't know. It's fantastic. We have 4 volumes in France, and we're only on volume 2 in America.
Wow.
So I'm stoked. God, it's so good.
I also recommend reading Animal Farm.
Yeah. I mean, read Animal Farm and then jump into that. And honestly, if you're an educator and you have students who are struggling to grasp what Animal Farm is about, give them the graphic novel, the trade paperback of volume 1 of Animal Castle, and kind of use that as a way to further that conversation and give them a chance to kind of see what those dynamics and that governmental, societal story is, because it's so good for that. And I've already got one school that bought some, like the librarians and teachers bought copies of this and have already talked about Animal Castle as a companion book to Animal Farm in their school. And that was all I needed in life. I just needed one school to like actually listen, like do it and go, oh my God, yes, we need to make this a companion piece. And then I do have another, Tim Smith, who does the book Teaching with Comics and does all the Teaching with Comics like seminars across the country. I got him on that too, and he is actually a social studies teacher, so he's been loving comparing this with societal conversations. All right, we got some in stocks, and first of all, I told you there was one more number, not one, that was mixed in with the number 1. So Hunt, Kill, Repeat from Madcave issue 2 is out this week. This was the one that I mixed in with my number 1, and I was wrong, and I love this book so much, so I feel so bad that I missed it. But this is the story of Artemis. All the gods have taken over the world, and they've enslaved humans in the modern society, and Artemis is mad about it and is fighting back. And Artemis is one of my favorite gods, so I'm glad that we get to see her story of her basically killing all the other gods in the name of protecting humans. Also in stock, The Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing, issue 8, which I believe is the end of that, and this is kind of like an sequel homage, if you could, to the Killing Joke cover. Instead of holding up the camera, now he's got the developed film. Mm-hmm. Groot has his own title again, issue 1, launched this week, just in time for Guardians of the Galaxy. Do not drop your spoilers in the comments, or I will delete it. Scarlet Witch, issue 5, out this week. Batman, The Audio Adventures, issue 6. Demon Wars, Scarlet Sin. Now we got a Scarlet Witch themed Demon Wars happening. Oh, wow. Yay, Peach Momoko, you go. Peacemaker, Tries Hard, issue 1. Also Starks writing Peacemaker.
Okay.
Yeah. Northern Blood, issue 2 from Blood Moon Comics. If you're looking for some more zombies, this is your zombie story with I like it's Ragnarok for the Reich. It's like Nazi Germans turned into zombies. Yeah. Carmen Courageous is your new Scoot title from Scout. I'm super excited for that one. Betty and Veronica, Friends Forever Game On. This is your little fun Archie story, all themed around video games. And it looks like Trick or Treat are back. I didn't get to read it, but I see Trick or Treat. They are. Trick or Treat are back. We're going that way with this because I got to read it immediately. I love Trick or Treat. Skull and Bones Savage Storm from Dark Horse is part of their like video game Ubisoft line. Image, the 30th anniversary issue 12 is out, which means congratulations, Image. We have fully celebrated 1 year of Image's 30th anniversary. It's over. It was like April 1992 that they launched, and now we have hit the 12 issue, 12 month, whatever you want to call it, mark. So all of those Image stories where they were celebrating different things for their 30th anniversary are over. Gargoyles, issue 5, out this week. If you are a fan of the Gargoyle show, you need to see this. And I will say, coming this summer to the Gargoyle story, Demona returns. Just saying. That's your teaser for this summer. The Exiled, Wesley Snipes books for Whatnot Publishing, issue 3 is out. Immortal X-Men, issue 11 is out. Sons of X Before the Fall, issue 1 is out. I don't know who's fallen, but we're going to fall. Fall of X is coming soon. Star Wars Darth Vader, issue 33. Edge of Spider-Verse, issue 1, again. This is your first appearance of Spider Killer. That was a big book this week that people wanted. Spider-Man 2099 Dark Genesis, also a thing people are really excited about. Carnage Reigns Alpha with some really cool covers. Cult of Carnage Misery, which, oh my gosh, this Nepli Misery cover is pretty cool. Scorched issue 17. Poison Ivy issue 12. Love that this is an ongoing, which have you heard the thing now, the rumors talking about? Karen Gillan came to James Gunn and said, since you're going to DC, I want to be your Poison Ivy. And everybody now is like, give her the G. Willow Wilson run that's currently happening as a movie in the James Gunn universe, and Karen Gillan would crush this story. And I'm like, let's do it. I'm here for it. I'm excited. Also, like, yes, you should cast Karen Gillan as your Poison Ivy.
Yeah, she would be a great Poison Ivy.
Moon Knight, issue 23, and Venom is for some reason there. We'll find out why when we read it. Issue 798 of The Flash. We are almost to that 800 issue, and there are going to be some really cool covers for that. Avengers War Across Time, issue 5. Batman and the Joker Deadly Duo wrapped up with issue 7 and a new Jock cover. So this is kind of like the one where the Joker's face became the bat. So now we've got a Joker smile as the bat. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, The Dog of War, issue 2, if you've ever wondered what it was like to have corgis in the Star Trek universe. There was actually a movie or a TV episode that already had that, and now there's a whole comic that goes with it. I already have that. We already talked about that. Frank Frazzetta's Death Dealers, issue 12 is out this week. Money Shot comes again, issue 1 from Vault Comics. This is a thing that people have been very excited to finally return. Money Shot is finally back. This is your newest volume. This was a huge push for Vault this year. Tim Seeley, one of his big books that he has been doing, and finally back. Tales from Nottingham, issue 3. This is your side stories in the Nottingham universe. The Walking Dead Deluxe, issue 62. These are your color reprints. And guess who's back? Shazam is back. And I love this that it has Welcome to Fawcett City, because you know Fawcett Comics is where Shazam originally was in. I'm super excited to have a new Shazam story. There was a ton of other great books. Of course, Spider-Man 8 came out. There's no more copies. And Star Wars came out with issue 32 or 30-something. This week, 32, I think it was. There's no more of that. And Batman celebrated issue 900 this week when there are no more of that either.
Some things about it.
Yeah.
The one I'm disappointed there's no more copies of because I didn't get to read it. The new Green Arrow.
I have a foil so you can wear some gloves. But
I
that's
just
it.
want to see Joshua Williams write Oliver Queen.
I know, I'm going to have to get more number ones. We sold out on Free Comic Book Day, but we'll definitely be needing to get some more number ones of that because I'm stoked for it because we know that Black Canary is also back in it, and I'm excited to see Green Arrow and Black Canary both back in a series. And for, Dawn of DC, let's get a Zatanna series. I'm just going to keep saying that. We got some trades in stock. I mentioned earlier that Kaya has the volume 1, so I brought that so you could check it out. The other thing that also has a volume 1 is Grimm. If you haven't checked that one out, I highly recommend it. This weekend, if you came out for Free Comic Book Day to wherever your store is, Vault had a West of Sundown issue 1 for Free Comic Book Day. If you want to keep going, there is a trade for that volume 1. This is the Universal Monsters in the Old West. I love this story. I think More people need to be reading it. I'm so excited that Vault decided to do it as their free comic book day title. And the amount of people who were like, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, it's Universal Monsters in the Old West. And they were like, oh my God, what? And like grabbed it. I'm like, dude, I'm so stoked that I can share the wonders of Vault and this amazing story right now with people. One of the things I get asked all the time is, can you get the TKO Studios trades in stock? Because they do all of their books digitally or in the box sets. And so I got some trades from TKO in stock this week. We got Sacred Lamb from Tim Seeley. We've got, I don't know how to say this. It's a West African fantasy epic, the Dhalia.
Yeah, Dhalia.
Dhalia. This is Juniba, and it is a West African folklore tale of Prince Mansour and his royal storyteller Awa. I was really excited to get this one in because I think that Juniba is a great cartoonist, and I can't wait to read the story because I'm always also like, oh my God, I would like to read the TKO Studios books. So I'm glad that they are fine, like they are available.
I thought they went away, to be honest with you. They had like they really pushed hard on those first 2 or 3 because I remember I was buying them because they always had great sales on their website where it's like, oh, buy one of the box sets and get a free box set. So I was doing those box sets, and then all of a sudden I just stopped hearing about them altogether. So.
Yeah, I'm glad that
it's good to know they're still putting stuff
there.
Out. Okay.
And they have so many good ones. So if you are looking for a TKO Studio book, please let us know. So
there was
that
first wave of stuff they put out
with like, Matt Kent and Jeff Lemire and all of those. Yeah,
and I was just like, dude, there's some really good books here.
We've got Lot 13 from Dark Horse Comics and Steve Niles, another great horror book. And Steve we just on FOC this week had another new Steve Niles for this summer, so I'm super excited.
Okay.
The Vampire Slayer from Boom Studios, not Buffy, but the Vampire Slayer. So this is part of the Willowverse, not the Buffyverse. So if you didn't check out the Boom Studios Willow book, here's a good way to get into it. Hauntology. This is Jeremy Hahn and Image Comics, and this is a collection of 28 short stories and vignettes behind like all kinds of like weird, creepy, nightmarish, like terrifying things. So it's basically just an anthology of terrible, scary stories. And I think it says, he did the whole thing. Jeremy did the entire thing during COVID lockdown. So this is kind of like what Jeremy's COVID project was. And it's only available, I think, in trade paperback. Yeah. And then lastly, it's all black and white, right?
Yeah. It's good. Art's good.
Oh, yeah. And then lastly, we have volume 1 of Least We Can Do, which, I'm a huge fan of this creative team. Yolanda Zandafini, is that right? Let me see, move your hand. Yeah, Zan Ferndino. Okay, and Elisa Rambello. I was like, I know. They are such a good team. I love them so much. And Least We Can Do is kind of the most fantasy we've seen. We've seen, Alice in Wonderland and the road trip. Oh my God, now I just forgot what it's called.
Furthest place from here.
No.
It had one of those titles.
And then also Hokate's Will. We had 3 great books from them that were kind of really in the modern world. Now we've got this fantasy story where it's kind of Steven Universe meets Harry Potter, where we've got a chosen one who's found a gemstone and really just wants to be a part of this rebellion that's going to save the world. In an oppressed, from an oppression that's happening. And I love our main character. I love this story. If you haven't picked it up yet, please grab it. I guess this would be also a Shadowline story. So from the Image Shadowline imprint.
Yeah.
So quite possibly my favorite. I don't know. I have so many. I really like comic books. It is a really hard time in our lives to be like, this is my favorite book because there are so many good books. Every time I'm like, this is my favorite book right now, I'm like, wait, maybe not. Maybe this is my favorite book. Maybe they're all my favorite.
I don't think there's one right now.
I can't pick one because they're all my favorites.
I can't even think of one.
I can't tell you. Like, it's like picking your favorite child. Matt's like everything.
That's up there.
Silver Sprocket
look,
for sure.
Everything Silver Sprocket ever has done is magical.
It's true. Everything is magical.
Let's get burgers.
Dude, comics are just great. I love comic books. Let's read more. We're going to read a ton more because new comics come out this Wednesday, and I'm about to tell you what they are, as a prepared person would. New comics out this week.
I think one that comes to mind for me off the top, just because of that art, is that Titan Mouse book.
Oh, yeah, that's a good book.
That book is. And that's Blood Moon, right?
That is Blood Moon.
Book's magical.
Dude, because Blood Moon's great. Is it Blood Moon or is it... No, it's Blood Moon.
I think it is Blood Moon.
I was going to say maybe it's a Blaze. Because we always think it's a Blaze and then it's Blood Moon.
Yeah.
Out this week, Saga, issue 64. Spawn 341. Green Lantern comes back this week as a part of Dawn of DC.
Who's writing it? Do you know who's writing it?
I can tell you. Maybe I can tell you. Adams. Is that the...
yeah, Jeremy Adams.
Jeremy Adams.
Been doing
The Flash, right?
The Flash.
Yeah, he is taking Green Lantern on.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's gonna be good. Everybody's really excited. Nocterra's back with issue 14. Oh my god, Danger Street is out with the cutest cover. It's Darkseid as a cereal box, like on like Fruity Pebbles. It's so
What
great.
issue is that on?
6. Junkyard Joe issue 6 is out this week. Phantom Road issue 3. I'm really hoping we keep finding out a little bit more about what's going on in that. Something Epic issue 1 from Image. Ambassadors issue 4. Clear issue 3. Nemesis Reloaded issue 5. Black Cloak issue 5. Old Dog issue 4, finally. I feel like that's been forever. Disney Villain Scar number 2, Frank Frazzetta's Death Dealer 12, Star Trek Defiant number 3, Monarch number 4, Samurai Doggy issue 6 from Aftershock, Ghost Lord number 1 from Boom, The Nasty number 2 from Vault. Oh, we're good. We might have some picks of the week coming up in this segment right here. Great British Bump Off number 2. I love that book so much from Dark Horse. Stoneheart number 3 with Emma Kubert just nailing everything I need in a comic book. Kong the Great War number 1. Assassin's Apprentice number 6. Don't Spit in the Wind number 2. Guess we know what Phil's pick of the week is. Stefano on art over there. You're gonna be excited. Second Coming Trinity number 2 from Ahoy Comics. A Legacy of Violence is back with issue 5. Dream Master number 5 from our buddy Jonathan Hedrick. Banshees number 2. Murder Inc. Jagger Rose, which is the new Brian Michael Bendis. Ancient Enemies, The Wraith and the Sun number 1 from Frank Miller. Mad Bobs versus Garbage Pail Kids, Time Again, Slime Again number 4. If you didn't get your Mad Bob versus Garbage Pail Kids free comic book day book, come grab one. Count Dante number 1 from Scout. Deep Dark number 2 from Source Point. Oh my gosh, I loved that first issue. Quicksand number 1 from Scout. Impossible Jones and Capture Lightning number 1. Keepers of the Cosmos number 1, both from Scout. I'm a huge Impossible Jones fan. I think Impossible Jones is the coolest. Godzilla Rivals, Biollante versus Destroya. Back to Fairy Talia number 5. That issue 4 broke my heart. So let's see what happens in number 5. And yeah, so that's what's coming out this week. I may have missed something. I usually do when I read that. Roughly that's what should be out. I'm stoked. It's going to be another great week of comic books. If you missed your free comic book day titles, they will be in our classroom Wednesday through Friday for you to pick up. Saturday we have comic creation workshops, so they will not be on the table because I need my table. But they will be out and about. If you didn't get them, please let us know. Hopefully you went out to an e-store, whether it was ours or someone else's, for free comic book day and supported your local comic shop, because that is what the day is all about. And hopefully you found some great new reads and you picked up something you would have never picked up before. Hopefully you loved it and you'll be ordering more of that book from your LCS. What was the title you were most excited about from comic book day?
The Smurfs.
The Smurfs 65th anniversary.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
That was the one that caught my eye the most. I pretty much rated the kids table and didn't even look at the adult section.
It's so true. Phil walked in and was like, which side's the kids side? This side? That's all I want. These are the best. Oh my god. And there was some great kids titles this year.
I remember looking at I haven't cracked into them yet, but I remember looking through them. There's like one that's called like Life Up or One Up.
Oh, Punch Up.
Punch Up. That was the one where I was like, this looks cool.
And then there was Met Cadets, which is getting the show. The Ranger Academy, which is the new Boom Power Rangers. And it's teen. It's like a new teen retelling of like not the Power Rangers, but it's like in the Power Rangers world. I'm curious.
The amount of kids where their parents were like, oh, there's a Power Rangers book, and then the kid picks it up and it's like, this isn't the Power Rangers.
Yeah.
This isn't the Power Rangers.
I'm really
like, yeah, it is. Just pick it up. Just grab it anyway.
You're going to love it. I was really excited about Girl Taking Over, the Lois Lane. We talked about that. And then the Clark and Lex, which is the other DC Kids graphic novel.
And those are out, right?
Girl Taking Over is Clark and Lex is not yet.
Okay, I didn't pick up that first issue because you said the book was out. So I was like,
the Girl Taking Over is out. I already had a kid last weekend, like the weekend before Free Comic Book Day, that was like, oh, I already read Girl Taking Over. It's fantastic.
Good stuff. I mean, those YA.
They're always good.
It's some of the best stuff that DC's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really excited for the new Jeff Lemire.
I saw that. I did pick that one up.
Yeah, I'm really.
There was like 2 adult titles I picked up.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Outside of the kids' books, I think that was definitely the one that I was like, oh my gosh. And then again, like I said, I was really excited to just put West of Sundown in everybody's hands, because I want more people to read indie in general, but I think that Vault and Universal Monsters are 2 things that everybody should trust. You should just know that Vault comics are going to be good, and anything with the Universal Monsters is going to be a good time.
Yeah.
So, again, thank you to everybody who came out for Free Comic Book Day. It was amazing. Thanks for everybody who came out to our Academic Avengers Reading Academy last weekend, since we didn't have a live stream last weekend to say that. And to my amazing team of volunteers that I had both weekends. Oh my gosh, you blew my mind. Last weekend, I was like, there's like nothing left for me to do because everybody was so incredibly like prepared to run their stations that I was like, I just had to get it ready. I'm going to give a special shout out to our volunteer, Brian. I know you're probably not watching anymore right now, but if you are, special shout out. Brian stamped almost every single Free Comic Book Day book by himself in one day. I don't even know what to do with that. I've never in my life seen anybody stamp all of the Free Comic Book Day books, nonetheless, almost completely in one day. He had a little bit of help from Ezra, our amazing teen volunteer, who did some of the stamping, like came in and helped him in the afternoon that day for a couple of hours. But Brian literally would not go home until he was done and stamped the whole entire Free Comic Book Day assortment in one day by himself. So special shout out goes to Brian for literally making Free Comic Book Day happen single-handedly by prepping all those comic books. Amazing. But thank you to everybody. And a shout out to Anthony, who flew all the way from Austin to be here as Miles Morales.
I legit thought you were going to go this whole episode without even mentioning
No way, man. He was here. It was weird because he was staring at me, but now that he's upstairs, it's less awkward because he's not here staring at me, but no.
I wanted to bring him on.
No, he's never been on. I don't know. I don't want to put him on the spot. He's never been on a live stream.
He should have been on tonight.
Yeah.
I should have just stayed home.
But no, special shout out. He flew all the way from Austin because I said, yeah, you know what we missed at Free Comic Book Day? Not having Miles. And he was like, getting on a plane and brought Miles.
And I remember the moment I got here, because I got here a little bit after it started, and I'm in the Free Comic Book room, and this little kid walks in and sees him and goes, oh, Dad! And Anthony's just like, hey, and he's like, and then after that, the dad is trying to get this kid to pick out comics, and the kid just keeps following Anthony wherever Anthony goes. It's like, all right, cool.
And that kid came up to me later, and he goes, Miss Shannon, where did you find this guy? He looks exactly like Miles Morales. And Anthony, just from across the room, goes, that's because I am Miles. I was like, I love you, Anthony. And it was so great. And the kid was like, I don't know what's real. Like, he was, like, so confused. It was so wonderful. He did actually talk to Anthony later, so I think he knows Anthony's not really actually from the cartoon or comic, but it was great.
Well, because Anthony doesn't look like a teenage boy.
No.
With that beard, he looks like... Huh?
He's grown up now.
He's grown up.
Yeah,
Miles.
he's the older Miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you, Anthony, and everybody else that volunteered this weekend. You are all amazing and wonderful. I mean, my beautiful, wonderful Princess Tiana, Alicia, who always sits here in that massive dress and, like, reads stories to kids all day long. And our costumed characters, our Cap, who was out there for, like, 5 hours just
He had those
melting.
Wakanda shields. Those things were cool.
He was just melting all day long, and yet he was like, I'm happy to stand out here forever. It's so great. So thank you to everybody that came. Thank you for everybody that volunteered. Keep reading. I hope you read all the books that you got. I hope you enjoyed them all. And if you do want more, always make sure you tell your LCS that they... Look, there he is! Do you want to say hi? We just did a whole segment about you, so now we got to pull you on camera because we just literally did a segment.
I'm going to let you close out the show.
There you go. Oh,
Yeah.
oh man. Okay, well, I'm going to keep talking to you while these guys switch places. So yeah, it's been such a great 2 weeks at Baton City. I'm so excited for everything. But look at it, there he is, Anthony, who we just did an entire segment to. Thanks for flying in. Thanks for being here.
Yes, very much so enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Very fun. First time checking out the new store. Big follower at the last shop. It's really awesome. So really cool being here.
I love that big follower. Anthony has been mine and Matt's best friend for years now. Yeah, for like 5 years. Matt and Anthony, we all met through the comic shop that I worked at. You've all heard about the comic shop that I worked at. Anthony and I met that way. Then I introduced him and Matt, and they had a stepbrothers moment where they became best friends after like literally 3 sentences. It was amazing. And then they started working together, and we have all been inseparable until we moved here. And so Anthony flew out to help, and we appreciate having you here.
It's fun.
Yeah. So that said, it was an awesome weekend. We had tons of fun. I hope you will read all of the books that you picked up during Free Comic Book Day and come in and tell us about the ones that you love the most, and make sure you sign up to get the rest of this. Subscribe to those books at your LCS, wherever that may be, and support comic shops. Thank you to the publishers who made all of those books available, and happy reading, everybody. We'll see you this week on Wednesday for New Comic Book Day.